What up, what up? It's a brand new episode of Yeah, I've Played.
You almost said, have you played? That's the other show.
Yeah, I did. This time around, we are talking about Quantum Break.
That's the one.
I'll put a little effect on there.
I heard it.
And we'll be discussing the game episodically this time around. Instead of one, let's go ahead and put in our guesses. I'm going to assume this whole discussion will be just shy of 10 hours.
Oh, Jesus
I'd say that's
Christ.
a fair estimate.
Well, I'm sure that there's I'll throw in, I'll say 7.5.
Fucking, that's what I was gonna guess. Really? Yeah, I was gonna say 7.5. I'll go for a clean 8 hours.
7.4.
All right.
The Price is Right bullshit.
So we'll see how it goes. But essentially, we're going to cover today the general cast of characters, the gameplay and graphics, and kind of opening statements, and then we'll be discussing the first chunk. So the game is broken off into
5
acts, split up by 4 episodes that are connected
Divided.
by junction points.
Split up into chapters.
Yes. So we'll be discussing just the first part, but let's give a little background information on Quantum Break. Quantum Break is a 2016 sci-fi action-adventure game developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Microsoft Studios. The player takes on the role of Jack Joyce, who is attempting to fix a fracture in time that will eventually lead to the end of all time as we know it. The game was originally conceived as a sequel to Alan Wake, however, publisher Microsoft was not interested in a direct sequel to Alan Wake after the first game's lackluster sales. The project pivoted to a new and original IP, and the resulting game is spread across, like I said, 5 acts, split up by 4 episodes of a live-action Quantum Break TV show. Wow, very ambitious.
A lot going on here.
I do want to say right off the bat, the initial concept for this was foreshadowed in a weird way by the Quantum Suicide episode of Night Springs that you can find in Alan Wake.
Yes. And was that the first one? Do you guys remember?
I think it's the first one.
I believe if
Yeah.
it wasn't the first, it was right. It was one of the first.
It's in that little trailer when you're making your way to the gas station.
That's right.
Yes.
I remember because that one stuck with me the most. It's probably because it was the first one. I just watched it moments ago before we started filming.
Yeah, I kept looking for like a reference to the Moorcock Institute or something.
I remember writing. I remember specifically.
Isn't that what it was called?
In my notes, it was Moorcock Institute. I was
Yeah.
like, LOL.
I didn't even pick
Why?
up on that.
Oh, it just clicked.
You got it?
Yes.
Pretty good.
So the game is. This was the first Remedy game I played, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And it was interesting for me personally to play it because I'm very interesting, and it's when I do stuff, it's just interesting. It's
pretty cool, yeah.
No, it was interesting for me to play this and then hop into Alan Wake and be like, oh, this feels very similar. And then to play
Yeah.
Max Payne and go, oh, wow, even 20 years prior,
Yeah.
it feels very similar. Like this, they really, and we've talked about all of their games pretty much now, all their open world and 3D and third person games.
Yep.
They all have like a very distinct feel. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, they all like not in just the way that like you physically the character moves and like the mechanics and stuff like that, but also just like the pacing of things. Kind of like, I don't want to say they all have the same story, but they all kind of follow similar arcs. You know what I mean? And like conflicts and like conflict resolution, conflict. You know what I mean? Which is like basic rules to writing a story, but they all have very similar themes.
They all have similar themes, yeah, for sure.
I'm not sure if Matt was the one to coin the term echoes.
No, that's a Sam Lake.
That was a Sam Lake thing. Okay. The concept of like story and character echoes being like, you know, the same kind of situation happening in a different world. That's something that we see so much in all the Remedy games, but I feel like Quantum Break, since it has a larger cast, I feel like there's representation of almost all of those other story echoes from all of the other Remedy games. And it's really interesting to see having this be the, I guess, of the, you know, entirely made by Remedy games, you know, not excluding Crossfire and stuff like that. This is the last Remedy game that I'm going to play until they make another new one, until Alan Wake 2 comes out. And just having all that prior knowledge of all the other games, each time there's just more and more that you can get from that next game that you play.
Yeah, totally.
At any point, if you could play Max 2 and then like Alan Wake, you know, you can go in any order and it'll enrich the experience the more you go through them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I played them all out of whack. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
both did because it was like Alan Wake, Max Payne 2, Max Payne 3, or no, Control before Max Payne.
Yeah.
So it was Alan Wake, Control, all the Max Payne games, then this. And it's kind of cool, like you said, kind of looking back in retrospect and finding all those things where you're like, oh, this reminds me of this from this game. This mechanic
Yeah.
is really similar to this and this, you know what I mean?
And they have to do it so well, or otherwise it would just feel like rehashing or bullshit. But it's good. It's that, but good.
They're using very simple building blocks, and I think that helps. Like they're like the actual like basic structure, and we've talked about this before, but the basic structure of all of their stories is some sort of like familial survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah, no matter which.
You were unable to protect a sibling or a family member or loved one, and now you are propelled forward by that guilt and that connection. And it's a super simple device to build a story on, but it's so relatable. For some reason, I mean, and there's a lot of other stuff culturally that, you know, you'll see like, there's a bunch of teen dramas about high school, and it's all like the same, you know, basic archetypes and stuff. And that's very relatable in a way, but I feel like the ties to family really transcend culture and time periods, where it's like those stories go back all the way to some of the earliest texts we have.
Yeah, there's a caveman whose, you know, nephew got eaten by a tiger, a proto-tiger that he was not able to save from, and he's, you know, crying, writing his little anime arc on the walls in his cave.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. It transcends culture.
Yeah. So I should say, too, I was using the word echoes because it seemed like, I was like, man, how do I, it's like a ripple, it's like an echo. And then I did read in the foreword to the Quantum Break novel, Sam Lake was using the word echoes. And I was like, oh,
Perfect.
spot on. All right. I am going to stick with that because that makes sense. Because it's like, it's not a direct mirror. No. It's like...
It's never one-to-one.
Yeah, it's just like... But it is like a decayed like reverberation of the initial signal when you're seeing like these character archetypes or these like story elements like repeat. Even in Quantum Break, like one of the things that was really striking to me is like a lot of the architecture, you know, like scaffolding, parking lots. It's all stuff you see in real life, but it felt like Max Payne 2 at times.
It felt just like Max Payne, but then there's parts that feel just like Control.
Yeah.
Just when you
especially in like the office buildings, and you get to like especially seeing like in the actual show as opposed to the in-game footage, when you see Monarch, the building, you're just like, holy shit. Because they don't really, it looks good in the game, you know what I mean? But then when you see it in the actual show, it's so
the sets and
breathtaking. And when they show, there's like, they do a big like aerial view of the building, and it's all glass, and you barely see it almost, you know what I mean?
You're just like, oh!
And when you're in that building, it was so reminiscent of just being in the oldest house in Control, and all the architecture was so similar and like that brutalist style.
Like super high ceilings and like overly dramatic, but also felt very real and just like harsh. Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy. It feels as though they like Remedy made all of their games, you know, and then connected them. That's how well done it is. And, you know, obviously we're going to get into it, but they also have that, like, same common language, I keep wanting to say. Like, especially, my God, it's very prevalent in
English.
Quantum. Yes. I'm glad you're familiar.
Yeah. Although there are translations.
There are the translations. Did you guys play the other translations?
So I'm currently working. Yeah. I'm working through the Spanish translation because I took Spanish in high school. But it's very difficult.
Yeah,
Duolingo's a little too expensive for me.
Yeah, so want to break on Spanish. But I guess what I mean by that, and something we've discussed before, is that I found, especially in Quantum Break, just the vocabulary that ends up popping up, especially from like the second half. They say the word control so many times. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yeah.
But they were talking about control. One of the parts or acts, I think, is named Control, or one of the episodes had the word control with a slash.
It's one of the
episodes?
Junction points.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was like control slash something, which totally emulates, you know, that's how the board speaks, with like the slash and like two different meanings. God, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you just start to see patterns. And it doesn't mean that they were intentionally placed there, but I think that's just the result of having cohesive style guides, basically. I'm sure like on the back end, they know like, hey, these are kind of like, this is our toolbox. We can add new stuff, we can take stuff out, but generally they use the same tools and have for, you know, nearly 30 years. And it works. It works.
I was shamefully self-promoting some of our, I think it was the Remedy Connected Universe, that video that Matt made, to somebody on Facebook that they had a question. They were just like, whoa, like there's stuff in Control that has to do with Alan Wake. Clearly there was somebody that was new to the franchise. And I just said like, I think every game since Alan Wake that was made by Remedy has secretly been about Alan Wake. like yeah, you're Jesse Faden, you're going through the, you know, the oldest house, you got all of her own battles, but at the end of the day, the connecting thread is always Alan Wake.
It is the cornerstone of the Remedy Connected Universe, and I think it is because it is like Sam Lake's baby. It's it's his pet project. Everything else is good and, you know, well loved and worked on, but you can tell it's like that's really his like magnum opus right there. And
that's something that you can see right in the beginning of Quantum Break.
Right, so we'll get into that shortly. I do want to mention real quick, gameplay-wise, very similar to Alan Wake and Control. I think it's a great middle ground between the two games.
Yeah.
It seems like quite literally like the missing link.
Yeah, big time.
It's the perfect transition where you're like, oh, this is like, because Control is so smooth. You know what I mean? Like it played really well, I thought. You know what I mean? And like Quantum Break is almost there.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not quite as clunky as Alan Wake felt at times.
Right, and so American Nightmare is a little smoother than Alan Wake, and then Quantum Break is a little smoother than, it's almost equal to, really. But I do think they reiterated on it a little bit better because some of the non-action parts of American Nightmare feel a little weird to me sometimes compared to like the non-action parts in Quantum Break. You're paced differently. I don't know how to put it. It's just like, you know,
the game's separated into combat and then exploration.
Very distinctly.
Yeah.
And you can tell you find a little like cache of ammo here and there. And I do think it's cool how over time, like persistent inventory hasn't really been like a big deal in Remedy games.
Yeah.
And I like that in Control, they're just like, fuck it. Recharge, self-recharging ammo all the time. You have the weapon, you can switch weapons on the fly. It's all one gun.
Right.
Blah 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 blah. You know, and I feel like they were moving toward that in Quantum Break, where when you know you're in a combat area because there's just backpacks full of bullets.
That you can run to at any moment. And you don't even necessarily need that half the time because the gun you'll be using will hold 500 bullets. You know what I mean?
It does pretty well.
And I mean, admittedly, I only played it on normal, so maybe it was a little bit easier to find certain supplies. But like you said, there'd be like, in like a little battle area, there'd be like 3 or 4 backpacks.
Yeah.
Like at every single corner of the room, near cover, you know what I mean?
And I don't say this to be critical, but the backpacks had whatever ammo you were looking for. You know?
Yeah, it's just like it's a universal ammo somehow.
You out fully on ammo.
But I like that. Like, I don't like ammo management in this kind of game. You know what I mean? I think that'd be... That's not what I'm looking for.
It would have to be built in a way that makes sense, like in a Doom or, you know, the Doom reboots. I mean, like the ammo management is a key element of the combat, whereas like the powers and the navigation around the battlefield are the key elements.
Yeah, because you could really use any of the weapons that you're given at any point in the game. It's just really about the way, what gun you want to use. You know what I mean? What kind of playstyle you like? Oh, do you like blasting people with a shotgun?
Did you have a favorite gun?
I kept 2 of them.
I kept the carbine all the time.
I kept the assault rifle pretty much.
Yeah.
The whole game.
I had carbine left side, left D-pad, right?
No.
No?
Auto shotgun. Once I got the auto shotgun, because there's a semi-auto shotgun. You don't get the auto shotgun until one of the last boss fights, I believe.
Oh,
but the semi-auto shotgun I used for a good chunk.
It was I never really got used to it. I kept carbine on the left, and then assault rifle on the right, and then gotta love that heavy handgun.
Burst fire pistol for me.
Yeah.
I like them both, but the burst fire pistol is pretty sick.
It was nice because it was basically like having one of the SMGs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they all felt good.
They did all feel good, and they all felt unique too.
Yeah.
It was like even if you switched from like tactical SMG to assault rifle, that's why I had a favorite. You know what I mean? 'Cause I was like, oh, I like the way the assault rifle feels more than the tactical or the advanced SMG.
And headshots mattered, which was nice.
Even more so than Max 3, we kind of talked about how the any of the guns are pretty functional. You know, like, I don't know, it's not a Remedy game. I didn't pay attention to the guns at all in this game, really. I was just like, I have gun, I shoot. You know, I don't know, maybe you guys felt that way? I didn't really like pay attention as much.
I did, but you don't need to. Like, the game lets you... All the guns work fine. They all have their own feel, but none of... Like, I think the reason you were able to not really think about it is because none of them suck.
Yeah, and there's
maybe
no
that's
like...
it. Yeah, none of the guns were bad.
Also, in Max Payne 3 specifically, there was like collectibles related to it. You got to find the golden gun part,
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can like choose.
It's way more in
you
your
wanna
face.
Hold like 2 pistols or 2 Uzis. You know what I mean? And you can. There was a lot more.
The dual wielding.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would criticize in the combat here is you can't like hip fire. You need to stop.
Yes.
And aim, and that's fine. It's just that control, you can just fire as you're moving, and I think that works better for the types of arena-style combat that the game sets up, you know?
Especially when it's in scenarios where, like, you dash dot, you know what I mean? Like, you dash in one direction, and then you have to almost, like, stop, aim, and shoot, rather than, like, continuing moving and just, like, kind of putting down some cover and then getting behind something.
Right, and something I didn't realize on my first playthrough, but I used a lot this time around, was how you can run and do a takedown, and you can like chain takedowns.
I love that shit.
And you just like one-hit kill guys.
Yeah.
It seems like when I understood that, I was like, oh, I don't think I used the powers enough on my first playthrough at all. I pretty much would sometimes, if I was like getting, flanked, I would burst whatever, the sort of melee kind of freeze shield or what. It's hard to keep track. You have so many powers and they all kind of are the same.
Yeah, I can see.
Go slow, go fast are kind of what they are. But aside from just occasionally sending out a little burst to like give myself a moment to reorient, I didn't really use the powers offensively my first playthrough.
I get that.
I used them mostly defensively, I feel like. I thought I was going to be using like the thing where you like freeze time, and then there's also you shoot out like a time explosion or whatever. Those are like 2
time blast.
Time blast and no.
Time blaster.
But like out of those 2, I thought those were going to be the ones I used the most. But it ended up being like the slow time run that you said where you can chain the attacks together.
That shit.
And then the time dodge / like, shield. You know what I mean? Those were probably the
Even the evade, like the dash, or
well, because there's like the dash, and then there's like you hold that same thing down, and then suddenly you start running while everything slows down. You know,
I
used that quite a bit, especially in the last couple of like big boss battles.
It's kind of cool too that it is like a iteration of bullet time from Max Payne, and that they've been as much as you see these story elements recur,
there's no shoot dodge.
Gameplay elements recur. There is no shoot dodge,
and they do have the final kill cam. Like you kill the final enemy in the room in Quantum Break. Suddenly it's like, dude, and you can, like in Max Payne, you can just keep fucking shooting them.
Yeah.
Right. that is kind of fun.
Get it out.
It's not like a huge feature, but I always just think that, like you said, it's just fun.
Every once in a while, it's a nice little polish thing where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna put 10 more rounds in this guy.
Yeah. Like, I don't have to worry about ammo. Might as well just.
Blast him. Make sure he's dead. I don't know if this is our section where we talk about all the all the combat and all the little ins and outs of it. I think for me for the first time, like kind of similar to I always like leaned more into the powers. I love the shoot dodge. It was always my crutch, whereas Matt kind of felt the opposite. Same with this game. I like gun was gun. Like I had gun in my brain. I had gun, and then I had all my abilities, and it was just like the gun was used in between the abilities. I feel like I used it more than I used a wider variety of everything more than I did even in Control. I found myself using the shield because it gave me a regen. And now if I was just like if my dodge was tapped and my run was tapped or whatever, I just throw up the shield and it would heal me.
Because I never used the shield in Control.
I did.
That was like my least upgraded of any of the abilities.
Yeah.
I did not give a shit.
I used it like twice. Ever.
After everything was
because otherwise
maxed,
it's like if you could just be quick enough, you know what I mean, then you don't have to worry about fucking just keep moving, fly around, just go in the air, dodge around.
That fluidity. It took me a little bit to get used to the auto ducking behind cover.
Yeah, I think I think you kind of mentioned that to us when we were talking in our Max Payne 3 review, because that had a lot of cover.
Yeah, like the snap cover.
Yeah, in which I've never been a fan of. I don't really like auto cover.
No.
I prefer it when it's like, we talked about when like you tap X or something. Like you tap a button and that will either pull you to the cover, you know what I mean? And then when you can choose between squatting and standing. Like you just hit the squat button or whatever. And you
That's what I prefer, is if I can just like crouch.
Yeah.
Let me just crouch behind cover.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't need to be like an object that my character is like attached to, and then I need to like poke around. And you know, it's like, it works in... The only time I feel like that shit works is like basically in like 3D like corridor shooters, where it's like, cool, you see like you have all your little like blocks of cover, and then there's a bunch of guys down basically in front of you. Like it doesn't really work for arena combat where you're like in these like large spaces that you're supposed to
generally
run around.
Yeah, there's no corridors, not like almost no corridor combat in this. It is all...
No, it's like sometimes one or two guys in a hallway as you're moving, but the battles are all like arena based.
You end up in some wider area,
And the enemies are not shy. They will flank you. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot hold your position.
Yeah, because they're all, you know what I mean? Remedy's always done a good job with, obviously as you play through the game, like in any game it should work in the sense where it's like the combat progresses in difficulty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they also do a good job of having it like the characters that you're fighting make sense. They did a good job with that in Max Payne, where it's like when you're fighting like the lower level guys, they're a little dumber, you know what I mean? And they're just kind of hiding and fucking like shooting at you, and then they'll run right out in the open.
We've got to shoot them.
But you get towards the end and suddenly it's like, you know what I mean? Like mercenaries, you know what I mean?
There's
Like
two
hired
walking
guns.
tanks in this fucking office building.
Yeah, and like those guys are like flanking you and they're like doing maneuvers and stuff. And it felt that way like when you were fighting people from Monarch in Quantum Break. It always felt, you know what I mean, once you got like into the building and you're fighting
Like
the guys
elite
who,
guys.
yeah, who could like
Reapers or whatever
they could move around in the stutters. You know what I mean?
my
Those
God,
guys were
yeah.
like suddenly I was like, oh fuck, okay, I have to actually like kind of pay attention to what they're doing, or suddenly there's three behind me.
And you had a
just
couple
blasting me.
dispatch options where you could just blast them until they died, or you could flank them and shoot their jetpacks, and then they freeze.
Yeah, that was cool. They'd like freeze me.
Love
there
that shit.
as
That
it
was so
blows up,
fucking
and they're
sick.
Just there forever.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think this will all... we can never contain our discussion on one topic to just that allotted time slot. So I'm sure we'll talk about more of it as we experience the rest of Quantum Break.
Yeah, and you guys did mention how cool it looked when they kind of freeze in time.
Yeah.
In general, the graphics look really good. This game looks...
We gotta talk about
I was
this,
able to run it on Ultra somehow.
Okay.
I don't know how. I usually can't with games.
Yeah. And it ran really well.
Ran smooth for me.
This game ran for me.
Well, no, hold on. Let me say this.
I'll let you say it.
I started on Ultra, it was stuttery, and then later in time, by like Act 4, I tried it again, and it ran smoothly. So I don't know if I had like some sort of thing where like the earlier episode, I was running other shit in the background, or if it just wasn't as optimized. I played this game on Xbox first. I do think it runs better on Xbox. I ran into some weird fucking bugs, and...
You guys both mentioned that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really...
For me,
That's good.
It was earlier on as well. I wasn't able to run this game on as high settings as I did for Control. Same PC, same setup. I had no other windows aside from the game. I would record it with Streamlabs, and then I would close that down to try A/B the situation. And there were some situations, and I'm assuming it was maybe just the port.
It's not a good port. Like
Maybe optimization isn't the best.
What did you guys... which launcher did you guys use?
I used the Xbox app.
Same. Okay, that's what I used.
But
it was on sale when we had to play it.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was like 80% off.
Yeah.
I was like, oh
What
shit.
a steal. Like, we just got, I don't know, did you buy Resident Evil 4 last night or whatever from that website, that shady website?
Yeah, for like
that link
$5
to?
or whatever.
It's like $4.60, I think.
For Resident Evil
less than
4?
$5, yeah.
Sometimes discounts are... This is my discount talking about time. Discounts. Crazy. But it was another, like, I can't believe you can get such a good game for such a low price.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing was, I read about it on the Wikipedia entry, and there was like, links to like articles about it when it launched. It just was like a bad launch. And then when I posted about the discount, like on the, I don't know, one of the Remedy subreddits or something, people were like, ooh, the Xbox version, or like the Microsoft version, I should say. Like the Microsoft like store version. Oh, I don't know. Hopefully they fixed it. And I was like, what? Like, And apparently, like, the Steam version, and this happens sometimes, where, like, you know, Steam or GOG or Microsoft Store or Epic, although Epic's usually exclusives for games that matter, fucking, like, they're usually the same.
Yes.
But every once in a while, there will be a different version, and some of them will actually be better optimized or run better or have better patches. And sometimes, like, the patches are available on other platforms, but sometimes they come standard on another platform, and it's just like, I don't know. It was fucking annoying to find out
older
that
Fallout games.
Fallout
Oh,
is
yeah.
notorious for having like 50 different versions, and I understand, but it is like you have to do a little bit of research before you can play the game.
which sucks because, like, I played it on Xbox, and it was great.
Yeah.
And then I played it on PC, and I was just like, sometimes I couldn't get it to launch. It would just, like, hold on, like, this white screen for a little while.
Oh, I didn't have that.
There was twice where I walked into a door, and I sent you guys one of the clips.
Yeah.
The floor disappeared, and I just fell through nothing.
Wow.
I did have one moment where I did fall through the floor. I forget what I turned
get
around quickly or something and just like clipped and then it was just like falling. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh well, okay. I had to
It's
restart.
fine. I don't mind a few bugs here and there.
Yeah.
It was just weird to find those on the PC version that weren't on the Xbox version when it's like it's Microsoft.
Right.
It's all Microsoft.
Yeah, right.
Like
It's all the same shit.
how much different is building for Xbox than building for PC? I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, I have no
I'm sure there's somebody that could explain it. This wasn't a glitch that I had, but I was doing an exploration segment where I was doing something with a time machine, and it wasn't, there's no combat, but I missed a jump and I just fell off the time machine into the center little inner sanctum.
Oh, I did the same thing.
I totally
Yeah.
died.
Yeah, I did that as well.
He did. He acted like he fell
Yeah.
a great distance, but it was like clearly just beyond the fall distance that you have to die
Like
from.
for dying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was like, that feels silly. There was a couple of Chronon sources. It wouldn't let me get. Did you guys
Yeah,
have
you said that.
I'm gonna say
I wanna
there's two.
hear what-
You mean
ones?
you could look at them, but you couldn't get them?
Yeah, and this was early on in the game, so I was just like, maybe I don't know what this is yet, and I come back to it.
There
But you
were
don't
a
go back to
couple-
stuff.
There were a couple that you do kind of have to look around a little bit or go out of the way. There was one in like the lab section later in the game where you kind of have to move almost to the next section, find this door that opens, go back, and then backtrack through
Right.
a hallway.
For sure, but like,
But are you saying like you were standing in front of it and you couldn't get it?
Yeah, I should have looked at my footage. I believe it was the one early in the game. I think you're in a warehouse. I know there's a lot of warehouses. I think it's before at the time Jack is trying to go meet up with Paul. He's pissed. He's trying to meet up with Paul at the gala, and he's on his way there to the dry. He's on his way to the dry dock, and you're in a warehouse. I think it's one of the first times that you see a graffiti thing as well. There was a giant painting of another graffiti of a giant elephant face, and the Chronon source was right there. I had used time vision, which is on the same level as like shoot dodge for me in terms of like names of powers.
Oh, time vision.
Time
yeah.
vision.
Uh-huh.
Time vision. All right, time vision. It was fully there, and I was holding Y, and it just would not. I just could not get it.
Right. There are some times where you need to basically like do time vision and angle the camera and angle yourself
certain way,
in
yeah.
such a way. And also,
Your
you
elevation.
cannot be too close to some of the Chronon sources.
Yeah.
Or just interactable objects to be in general.
Yeah, because I faced that a few times. 'Cause I did play with a walkthrough this time because I wanted to get everything and really go through it.
Yeah.
And as I've already proven my skill as a gamer completing this game previously, I felt like it was okay to use assistance on this purely educational run of the game that I
The
did.
council did, agree to let you do
Yes.
this. They gave you your gamer pass.
So, but I found many
Game
instances.
or pass.
I found many instances where what I needed to do was walk up to the Chronon source, walk back a few steps, then identify it again, and then I could get it. But if some of them you could just walk up to and get. Some,
Yeah.
it's like there's something about
gotta, like, weasel
the
yourself in
collision
there.
detection between like your eye line and the item
Yeah.
that did not work. And I'm assuming
sure.
that any of those ones that you ran into you couldn't get.
Probably
You
that
just needed to
scenario.
position yourself in a fucking weird way.
Yeah,
Because I had a couple of those where it was like, I would get it for a second, I'd be like, oh, there it is, but then like I moved a little bit too far and then it's gone again.
right.
And so I'm like,
Yeah.
I just kind of keep doing like this kind of thing with my character until eventually it's like,
Until you
why? And I'm
eventually
like,
get
yes,
there.
go move.
I don't remember that shit on Xbox.
And if since you got all, did you 100% with that guide?
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. Then I don't know. Do you remember on your first playthrough, or Jordan, on your playthrough? I feel like there was a couple. I would use time vision, and it would show me where the chronon source was, and I was just like, "There's no way I can get there." It seems like it was like pointing in a direction that you never go in the level.
There was just a couple that I was like, "What the fuck?" And then when I finally looked them up later, I was like, "Oh,
All right,
god
maybe
damn
that
it!"
was the case.
Yeah, there were a couple that were like, it wasn't, they were in a place you couldn't get, so you had to like be on the right corner of some catwalk, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Or, like, fire escape, and then it's like floating a little bit, and for some reason you can get that one.
Oh, okay.
Whereas normally you wouldn't be able to get one from that distance. You'd have to
Which-
get closer or whatever.
Yeah, there's inconsistent
There's a
rules.
couple, yeah.
And the only other thing I can think about for the chronon points,
Chronon sources.
chronon
Yeah,
sources,
sources.
excuse me, as it's escaping my mind, and I'm trying not to forget what it was, I may have to just abandon it because
If you want a second, I have a point I wanted to make.
please.
It's like, because we were talking about, you mentioned in the notes, it's like the game is kind of split up into combat / exploration.
Yeah.
Which is true, but there was also, we complained about it a little bit in Max Payne 3, because the whole, in the very first or second mission, it's the second mission when you're in the dance, the club in Max Payne 3, and it's the only time where it's actually timed.
Yes.
And there's people throughout the entirety of the game, though, being like, you gotta hurry up. Come on, come with me. And I noticed the same kind of thing in Quantum Break where none of it was timed, but especially, I didn't find anything in effectively the first chapter of the game, or two, because the whole time you're there with Will, and Will's like, come on, Jack, we gotta hurry up. Or it's like, he's like, I gotta get back to Will. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Will-
He might be in danger.
Will says,
And inevitably,
"Come on,
I
Jack.
could have, like,
Me and my American accent we have to go."
there were a couple of actors in this game who don't have American accents. Like, they're not. You know
Jack,
what I mean?
it's me, your
Him
American
and
brother.
Paul Serene kind of talks out of the corner of his mouth. He
does!
all the time because he's Scottish. I'm
didn't
pretty
know that.
confident the actor is Scottish, so he has to
Yeah.
kind of like manipulate his face a little bit.
I'm not allowed to talk about which countries people come from anymore.
Watch countries.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He's from the EU, but that happened in Quantum Break all
oh
the
yeah,
time.
you got canceled. I
in
forgot.
every single chapter, every single time. I
I'm
was trying
kidding. I'm
Every time.
kidding.
Every time I was trying to explore, they were like, "Come on, we gotta. What are you doing? What are you doing over
should
there?"
get going.
Yeah, we
when,
should get
when,
going.
when I first played this game, I finished that first act and saw my completion rate. And I was like, what the fuck? So I went back in and just did it again, and I was like, oh, I didn't need to listen to them at all.
Yeah.
And it
Inevitably,
was
I
frustrating.
picked up on it quick,
the
but
only,
it's
yeah.
and you don't like Max 3. You don't always have a buddy, generally. But in those segments, I remember, especially because we'll get to it. A lot of the collectibles, labored reading. Sometimes there is extensive. Like as one example I gave is that I had a session where I was playing for an hour and a half. I played longer than that time, but in my capture was an hour and a half long. One combat section, and the rest of it I was just spending reading emails. And I'm not complaining. I love that it has that extra world building, but there's a lot to it. So when you're sitting there reading stuff and you got whoever with you, and they're like, Jack, we really need to get going. And they just keep cycling through like 3 of those while you're trying to read this fucking
You're like,
super
one
long
second, I'm only on the
paragraph."
second email in this 13 email chain that I have to read all of them.
Control-
Each email's 400 characters.
Yeah.
Control did it way better, where you get memos,
Yes,
if this is a memo in response to this memo, or this is a message in response to this. So the conversations are broken up,
And like
but
half
they're
of it is blacked out,
but
so
they're-
it's like a little
right,
easier.
but they're memorable enough that when you find one, you're like, oh. Even if I got them out of order or I got them way like hours apart, I was like, oh yeah, that's
remember that
linked to
thing.
that. Like it triggers something. Whereas like the emails in Quantum Break, I think you mentioned this, like especially
Wow.
like Dr. Amaral, like a lot of hers are just like everything's going to plan.
Yeah.
And it is like bricks of text. Now,
Yeah,
I
man.
think that,
Half of them you could read like the title of the
like,
yeah.
email,
Got it.
and you'd be fine.
and I was really looking for like deep lore. Not there in a lot of the emails.
Scraps.
I mean,
here
there's
and
like-
there,
I feel-
No,
allusion.
I mean that happens,
But I feel
But
like
but
most
not
of it's just,
consistently.
like,
Not consistently.
it's like it's kind of like very weakly building character relationships in those emails,
Right.
a
Because
little
there
bit.
was like one complaint, and I think it might have to do with the choices that I made,
get more
and we'll
stuff
get
clicking
more
over
into
here.
it. You know what I mean? As we talk more about the game, but because of the choices that I made, I feel like the character development on some of the characters suffered You know what I mean? And I feel like I didn't realize there was diaries for every character until I was 3/4 of the way through the game.
I didn't realize it all my first
don't think
playthrough.
anything
I was,
pops
if you
up
hadn't
saying
said
that.
anything to me, like you said that to me, and I was like, "What are you guys talking about?" Because
Yeah.
I felt like some
No.
of the characters were a little underdeveloped, or like the choices or the changes suddenly they made. I was like, "Oh, that was kind of weak." You know what I mean? Not that I'm like a fucking writer or creative
Yeah,
writing.
you're
You
just
know what I
like-
mean? Like I don't.
Like, where's that come from? Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is, in my opinion, just the growing pains between Alan Wake, where every character is basically an archetype that has no arc. There's no character development in almost any character in Alan Wake. They all just represent, an archetype.
Yeah.
Like,
Not true, Matt. Barry Wheeler starts off with just a jacket. End of the game, he's got the Christmas lights.
okay, that's the one exception. But they're all just representative of an idea or an emotion or an
Yeah.
action.
You don't really know, like
Similar-
they're deep down. You don't really know
Right.
what motivates them at the end of the day. A lot
And
of the
a
time,
lot
other
of
than
them-
shallow things.
Yeah,
And-
and
and-
they have built out lives, like
Well, that's the thing.
but even still, there's not a lot of
They have
internal kind of like discussions on
right, and they all have complex backstories, and it's mentioned several times in like the Alan Wake Illuminated book that like, oh, this character has a lot going on, this character has a lot going on, but we just couldn't fit it into the game.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to fit more of the backstory into this game, and it's just the delivery is a little clunky.
yeah.
It is. It's a little ham-fisted in the sense where you're like, okay, so I have to stop everything, and I have to read an email that's longer than any email I've ever written to anybody or received from anybody. I'm like, because if I had to say that much, I would attach a Word document. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
or
I'd
just
put
call
in a
them.
fucking like Google Docs link, or I'd call them and be
Voice
like,
memo.
"Can we do a video chat real quick? I have to talk to you for an hour." You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit there and fucking type one email that is pages long. It was rough at some points.
so
Where
we-
I really did at a certain point just kind of start like skimming.
I did.
Being like, I think I get the gist. I'm done.
75%.
You didn't
of the
miss
way,
much.
Yeah, 75% of the way. 75% of the way through the game, I was just like, all right, I'll skim, and I'd look for bigger things, but there wasn't as many to be found in Control. But that's not critical. Like it's still like you said, it was the growing pains and the stepping stone
Right.
to what became something incredible, and I'm really glad they did it. We have a lot of balls up in the air right now. I do want to talk more about the accents. I do want to talk about. There was a couple gems that you could find with those notes.
Yeah, we'll get to those as they appear in the game.
As they come up.
My final point on Chronon sources
Oh, yes.
is that there was a couple times where, or I guess more exploration in general, there's a couple times that I would when looking for secrets, I'd accidentally progress to the next section
Yep.
and not be able to return. Didn't
Yep.
happen a ton, never happened in Control.
There
And,
are also,
Well, it's the open world, baby.
Yeah.
and there are also moments where, especially when you're playing as Paul Serene, where you can't interact with some things at first. On your first pass by them, you have to wait for a dialogue moment to end,
Right.
or for something to happen.
It's a little awkward.
I had
I
to
would go
skip.
so
I missed a couple, so I would go back. You know what I mean? Because you can go back to any.
a lot of the
section,
Paul
really.
sequences, you're walking with Mr. Hatch, and you just feel like, oh, I should be keeping up with him. When in reality,
And also
he will
because
wait
he's
for
like,
you.
Paul, what are you doing? You know what I mean? When
Yes.
you're fucking leaving alone, like every fucking character in the game. is like, what are you doing back there? I'm like, I'm playing the game.
I think a character should say that stuff once
Yeah,
and then say something like, I'll wait till you're done. Or
Yeah.
because I understand the realism. There's urgency, but also like, just stop confusing the player.
I like comments when they're like, what are you looking for in there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think you're gonna find over there?
even that's like,
what are you
that's
up
like
to?
that's like a hint. Like, what do you think
Right.
you're gonna find something over there? It's like,
Like, maybe?
oh, maybe I will.
Oh, they're negging me.
Yeah, they're pegging me. We got to this one,
that scene between Hatch and Serene, the
pegging
the
scene?
fuck scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. The one where the one where he was pegging him.
I don't know if you can call it pegging.
No,
when
he was wearing
It was a separate
separate phallus.
yeah.
Yes.
apparatus. Phallus.
An apparatus phallus.
It's
Phallus
ironic. It's-
apparatus.
He opened up his
Good album
hatch.
name.
That's where he got the name. We'll get there, but there's that one.
That's what he said to him.
Spoilers.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
There's a character banging on the door that's waiting for you to let
Sophia
let her
Emerald
in.
is trying to get in.
She's trying to get in there so bad. Oh god damn it, Paul! Please.
What are you doing in there with Martin?
There's you're always together. You didn't even respond to my emails about getting dinner. sorry, I got really distracted by that. There's a scene where there's a bunch of like you earlier in the game where you find some you buy the train tracks or something and you find a bunch of so your first time like, oh my god, this is like a little meeting point like that. Monarch hits at like a satellite location where they have a couple of their laptops and radios left behind. Yeah. It's your first time seeing that. You're like, whoa! And you start checking it out, but I think it's Amy. It's just banging on the door because she's waiting for you to let her in. And like I'm trying to read these again monolithic paragraphs, and it's just constantly dun 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 dun. Jack.
Yep.
I'm excited to get to that part of the game because I thought that was
dun dun dun. What?
I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's in Act 2, though. We're going to discuss Act 1 today, but before we get there, a couple more things I want to mention.
Half an hour in.
One, this is maybe the only game I've ever played where when a character says, follow me, you follow them, and you are perfectly paced right alongside them or just behind them. In almost every fucking game where it's like, follow this character, you cannot make your character walk slow enough to not eventually pass them.
Oh, yeah.
Or fall way behind.
Yeah.
It's either like you're walking, and that's at half the pace that they're like power walking at, and then you switch from the walk to the run, and your run's like double their speed, and suddenly you're just fucking leaving them in the dust.
Yeah.
I can't overlook how it was like, when it happens several times, it's so well done.
Yeah.
It's something that so many games have fucked up in a way where it's just like, I know how it works. Like, I know how you set those values.
Like, you have to, like, the dialogue time, what it's going to trigger, where you're getting, like, all the
even that. I just mean the value, the variables of
NPC speed and
like the walk speed. Like you set those things.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to go, if this is number A, we'll make number B right around here.
Yeah.
You could put a cap on it.
Yeah.
You can make a minimum and just make sure that it doesn't, if this is your window, you stay in that window. And I don't understand how Quantum Break is, I think, one of the only games I've ever played that doesn't fuck it up.
I have a small theory as to why that is, and I think it's because we've mentioned before when we've talked about Quantum Break in previous plays, and we'll get to the parts, but you play as multiple characters in this game. Really only 2, but you mentioned that they had initially planned on you being able to play as a 3rd character as well. And so I think it's because they had it mapped out for those other characters that they were like, oh, let's just take that. Like you said, oh, why don't we just have value A and value B be the same thing? You know what I mean? Because especially if you're, you know what I mean? If you're Jack Joyce and you're interacting with one of the characters that you can potentially play as later in the game, then you've programmed them both effectively the same. You've programmed, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't know how to
I think I get what you're saying.
Articulate what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But because they put more time into you playing as other characters in the game, I don't know, maybe that affected the way that they interact with each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Could be. It's just...
Or maybe they just pay more attention to detail.
Right. It just doesn't seem like that hard of a thing to... If you're going to fucking force a situation where you need to follow a character, just let me follow him.
I think
That's true.
The reason that can be so assy is, first off, they're just too lazy. A lot of developers are like, whatever, run speed. I think if you make both of the characters the same walking speed, and if you stop for a second to like, oh, what's that? Then you'll never be able to catch up to them. So they want to make sure that you're fast enough to catch up to them.
In Quantum Break, they stop when you stop.
They will stop when you stop.
Then I feel
which also is not that fucking hard to do.
Yeah, because you can just set a certain distance. You're like, when you reach this distance from the character, they stop and wait.
Walk into point B. If character is not with you, wait.
Anyway,
seems like a good way to do it.
It's enough armchair game designers. It's just Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's that. It doesn't feel like it's that difficult a concept.
And thank God, because there's a lot of sequences in this game where, and generally it's just the exploration scenes, but they'll be like, follow Jack, or follow Will, you know what I mean?
Follow yourself.
Follow yourself. Honestly, not that crazy of a thing that could happen in this game. But yeah, that's a good thing to mention. That never was an issue.
So we've mentioned a bunch of people, and I want to get into the next section of our discussion, which is the cast. Just so we know who we're talking about. Andrew...
That's me.
He just says his name sometimes.
I said and crew.
I know what you said.
All right.
Andrew.
Was I in the game?
I'm cast.
I'm cast.
I'm Jack Joyce.
I'm Jack Joyce. Yeah. You want to comment on my,
With his
on my
ripped
outfit
knees.
of the day? Yeah. I didn't have any blue jeans because I'm not a fucking loser.
Looks at both.
I'm not wearing blue jeans.
You do.
I'm not right now.
Well, I guess you're not a loser then.
Yeah,
Are those wind pants? The track pants?
they're golf pants.
Golf pants.
They're
Okay.
break
Yeah.
wind pants. I found this blue shirt in the bottom of a costume basket that I've always had.
Yeah, you look like the
like-
manager of a chain restaurant.
Like I want to look like Jack
He
Joyce.
spends way too much time just sitting at the bar.
I'm doing the books.
And drinking.
and just watching TV.
Yeah,
Watching Bar Rescue. And you're failing.
So the cast
Why can't he come here?
is, of course, we mentioned Jack Joyce. Jack Joyce is the protagonist. He left Riverport after getting into some legal trouble.
It's ambiguous.
He's a bad boy.
It does kind of, it points at that a few times.
That's why he knows how to use guns. He's
been arrested.
He's been staying in Thailand, and then he was contacted by Paul Serene, and he came back to Riverport, USA. It's a made-up city. And he is, of course, played by Shawn Ashmore, who everyone knows from the Animorphs TV show.
And
right.
X-Men.
No,
No one remembers those.
we don't talk about those movies. Bryan Singer's a no-no man.
He is.
We don't-
That's right.
Paul Serene,
We don't talk about Bruno.
I don't know what that means.
Was he in the movie Bruno? With
No,
the
it's
Sacha
a-
Baron Cohen movie.
It's a line in a song from the recent Pixar movie Encanto that I watched.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh,
Family animated movie.
I heard it's a good one.
yeah, good.
really liked it.
I like that you watch these family movies when you
Great.
don't have a family.
They are all gone.
It's just you and your plushies.
Watching
We have a good time.
Encanto together.
Me and my pop vinyl.
Your Oni cartoons.
Paul Serene is the founder of Monarch. He's a lifelong friend of Jack Joyce, and he is played by a guy who I can't remember.
Littlefinger from Game of Thrones.
That's
All right, that's good.
Steph watched me play my heterosexual life partner, and she's like, "That's Littlefinger," and I was like, "Is he not American?" And she's like, "I don't think he is."
No,
I'm like,
he's
Why,
not.
why does he have a little finger?
No, that's just his
his character.
that's just his character's name.
I guess he's,
Stupid, fucking dumb. I don't care.
Oh, okay.
I didn't like the show very much.
I started to watch the first episode, and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
You might not like Elden Ring then as much as you think you are going to. They're written by
I
the
don't know
same
if I
guy.
would.
Written by the same guy.
George R.R. Martin.
I read that he didn't even retweet like the game launch or anything, or didn't mention he has not said anything since it launched.
He doesn't seem like the best guy, like the coolest dude. I don't know if he's part of the cool guy club.
It's unclear to me how much he even was involved.
I thought Elden Ring was Lord of the Rings. Would that be
Nope.
J.R.R. Tolkien?
Elden Ring
No.
has nothing to do with Lord of the Rings, but it was written. Yeah, I mean, like he's
In
a
part,
co-writer,
yeah.
in part by George R.R. Martin.
What the fuck?
George Railroad Martin.
I thought somebody told me that it existed in the Elder Scrolls. I mean, Lord of the Rings.
Well, they lied to you.
No, you're just saying ring. Your brain went. You went Sonic.
I was getting a hotline.
Lord of the
call.
Rings. Sonic Rings. No, Lord of the Rings.
Those are the only two things that Andrew has any knowledge on.
And then in the back of his head, he was going. "Hey, then you should have put a ring on it." Paul Serene, founder of Monarch. William Joyce. William Joyce is the brother of. This is going to be so hard for people to follow. Thank
Sorry.
you. William Joyce is going to be the brother of Jack Joyce, the estranged brother.
Played by Dominic Monaghan, famous for Lost.
Lord of the Rings.
I always forget that he's in Lord of the Rings because I've only seen those movies once and I just kind of liked him.
He's
I'm
one, of the,
like, "All
he's
right."
one of the hobbits.
He's one of the hobbits. He's Merry, I think. And
or Pippin.
but I remember him from the hit TV show Lost.
I've never seen that either.
Same.
Beth Wilder, a Monarch agent who has defected and is working secretly against Paul Serene,
Shame.
who's
played by
played by Courtney Hope, who is
Jesse Faden.
in control.
And I'm going to be honest with you. Didn't realize that for the first when
I
first
didn't
saw it,
realize it for a while. Her
mean-
facial structure looks different.
It does
It's
look
different.
different.
Her nose looks different.
her
Her
cheeks.
forehead, her cheeks, the whole. I think she at some point she did lose some weight because I've seen her look much more gaunt in her cheeks. But even still, she
just
looks a lot different. Could have been
Face capturing technology, but I don't know because Shawn Ashmore looks like
looks
himself.
incredible.
And if you've played LA Noire, he also has a bit role in that
Oh,
game.
really?
Yeah, he's somebody who you question later in the game. He has a cameo. He's not a big part of LA Noire.
Damn.
He's just someone who you interrogate at one point, and like you chase him. And I remember LA Noire being very ahead of its time for face capture technology.
It still looks
But
pretty
it's
good.
still it looks just like him. Like you wouldn't be able to tell
Wild.
the difference between the two games. I
Damn,
don't think.
I didn't know he
So
was.
it
I'd
was
love to
weird.
see.
When I saw her, I knew she was in the game from you guys telling me.
But you weren't
But I was
sure
like,
who?
is that her? She's red haired and she seems like a main
Right.
character, but
It definitely, yeah.
Also, I think she has like a piercing. Is her nose pierced?
in real life,
No,
in the game.
her ear is. She has.
It's an ear piercing?
She has an ear piercing.
I don't know.
I feel there's something else where I
nose
was
was-
like, I thought she had like a facial piercing.
I don't know.
I remember
she has her
the-
hair pulled back real tight too, so that could
Yeah,
be
that can change a lot about the way you see a
Yeah,
person.
I could change my hair 3 separate ways right now, and I'd look like 3 totally different
Yeah.
assholes.
So I did not recognize her initially.
Initially, I wasn't sure if it was her. The voice did it. Every time she spoke, I was just like, it's Josie Faden. But even her character model in Control looks a little bit different from the actual actress.
Yeah, the outfits are very.
Well, they're
different,
always
too.
stylized.
Yeah. Uh huh.
I mean, I meant more like facially.
Right. But I mean, like, they stylize all the
Yeah.
facials.
And they got some stylish facials going on. Hell yeah. So I think maybe that was part of it. Like they weren't trying to do, like, was it necessary to really do a 1-to-1 as long as it looked like a real person, you know?
No, it's fiction.
Yeah.
So speaking of fiction, we have Martin Hatch. Martin Hatch is basically the public face of Monarch. And so
Yes.
he's Paul Serene's right-hand man, but he also seems to be having something else mysterious going on behind the scenes.
He's got other motivations.
Yes,
Yeah.
His own
that
personal motivations.
are beyond our understanding as mere humans.
He has some cool fucking scenes. He's played by Lance
I
Reddick.
fucking love Lance Reddick.
From a million fucking things. He's just like a character actor that I
Oz,
feel like
the
I've seen
lawyer.
in
Yeah.
The Oz, just Oz.
the Oz. Is he the guy? Never mind.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is he the guy, from the opening scene of the show Oz, who bit off the other man's penis?
No,
Oh.
not him. No, that's I don't know that guy's name, but his name's Tobias Beecher
Okay.
in Oz.
I know.
I haven't seen that show.
Good show.
It's a good show.
I really liked it.
I watched it when it came out, and I was probably way too young to be watching it, and was like, "Whoa, this is
Yes.
adult."
They bite his pee-pee off, is what you said. I
You see him. You
don't
see his penis.
you see it fall right off. If you're like me and you didn't really know who Lance Reddick is or was, he's like, I feel like a lot of people maybe feel this way. I was like, oh, it's that guy. He's one of those actors
Yeah,
that you're
you've
like,
seen
oh,
him. He's
that guy.
a very distinct looking man, and
Yeah.
he's a very good actor.
And-
I really like
oh my
him.
God,
And I think your
incredible.
only exposure to him was from the Eric Andre show,
oh, he
which
was.
which is like a great bit.
Is that the
One of
one
my
they
favorite
have
bits.
put on the?
He says, "I wish I was LeVar Burton." While he's dressed as both his character. Well, he's dressed as simultaneously LeVar Burton's character from Star Trek and The Color Purple.
Oh my god,
So-
super funny. And just while we're on the topic, his character model I think is the best I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys felt that way, but
No.
like his face, you didn't feel that way.
I think part of the reason his looked so good, no hair.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about hair
that's a good
physics at all.
point. They could just model out his dome, but I remember thinking, I was like, damn. Even compared to Control, I was just like, this is the best looking like 3D representation
There was a lot of
person I've ever
there's a
seen.
lot of Uncanny Valley in this game.
Yeah,
A lot of Uncanny Valley.
dude,
where,
they got
like,
his eyes,
especially
right.
with
Like, it's
him,
crazy.
where there's just moments where like this isn't a critique because it's a great looking game and I think it runs really smooth. But like their mouths move a little, like that's an Uncanny Valley thing sometimes.
little
Is that like,
floaty.
it's not that it's bad because you can tell, but it's like they're moving their mouth too much while they're talking. You know what I mean? And it's like really exaggerated, and you're
They're-
kind of like, I'm uncomfortable.
Phenomes, I think.
Makes me uncomfortable.
Maybe Matt, you can verify here. Those are like
Yes, the female gnomes, those weird things you
Phenomes.
keep sending me.
I thought you'd appreciate them.
I'm
Those
trying
are,
to talk about characters though, and we're just
The twerking on
yes.
top of a toadstool.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I think they're called phenomes. Those are
hashtag
like the-
toadstool twerk.
do the toadstool twerk. Phenomes, if I remember, I think that's the word. That's like the term for like the mouth movements that you make a character do.
It's like when you see those blowjob robots.
Yeah, they're doing a big O. They're doing the O phenome. And so sometimes those can be a little floaty, but even still, it looks incredible. What's the next character on the cast?
The last one I'm going to mention here is Liam Burke, who is Monarch's head of security. And as a bonus character, he is the husband to Emily Burke. And as another bonus character, she's pregnant.
She got baby in her.
She got Baby Burke in there.
Can I be honest?
Baby Burka.
The moment that they introduced Emily Burke, I was like, God damn it. I don't give a shit about this.
I thought you were going to say you wanted to fuck her real bad.
No, just fucking.
I wanted to fuck her real bad.
I have a pregnant fetish.
Well, I don't understand. What's, it makes sense.
Wanted to tag pregnant stash?
I think he means
Anyone, because it's your prime directive as a human.
That's what I'm
she
trying
can
to
carry
do.
baby.
Yeah.
Then
There's
put
going
in
to
there.
be beyond anything. There's an innate at a cellular level attraction to pregnant Emily Burke.
Essentially, it all
It's like
comes back
pregnant
to
Sunny Smiles.
She's got a blonde pigtail. She got the big eyes.
And so the whole game, these are the main characters we'll discuss right away. Others will come into play, but the story is being told like almost, again, every Remedy game is being narrated by its protagonist.
Yes.
There's always a device that allows that to happen.
Yes.
And in this, the device is Jack Joyce is being interviewed by Clarice Ogawa.
Ogawa, I think is that how you say it? Yeah.
We don't know.
Who is-
Ogawa.
We're all white.
I don't think they mention her last name in the
No.
in the thing, but I saw it written down.
When her subtitles are on, it just says Ogawa.
Yeah.
It doesn't pronounce
But I'm
it,
saying,
though. I think
yeah.
it's
Oh, like they never
doesn't,
say
like,
it?
That's what that's how I saw it written down.
I was like,
But they don't
say
they
it,
didn't
man.
say it aloud.
I don't believe they do. Yeah.
But she's like a leading security agent at Monarch, and so there's a sort of like debriefing between her and Jack Joyce. He's like, "Well, it all started one day in Riverport," and he tells the story of Quantum Break.
I was kind of like I was initially like it took me. I was still by the end kind of confused as to the nature of
the
that
interview?
interview. Is it like I was like, is it an interrogation? Is it an interview? Is it a? Because also
They never fucking say.
no, and also as you go through the game, you do find some correspondence between like Clarice Ogawa and like Dr. Amaral and also Martin Hatch. And
Yeah.
her motivations also are a little wishy-washy and unclear.
Clarice?
Clarice Ogawa, yes.
I mean, we're gonna spoil everything, but it is very clear that Hatch has almost like a shadow government inside of
Monarch.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we're giving away because they kind of touch on that the moment you get introduced to him, that there's kind of
own
a
agenda.
divide between him and Paul.
Right.
Like and it's 100% over power, you know what I mean? And like appearance
drive.
of power.
Right.
Say hunger we devour.
But
Great song.
she does seem to be one of the people who has decided to side with Hatch over Serene.
And it's I'm trying
And it's
to-
never blatant, but there are times where
No,
their
but it is in a
correspondence
couple
suggests,
emails where she's privy to information that like, as Martin Hatch, you wouldn't want like everyone knowing about.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
I remember in my notes initially on Martin Hatch.
in a second. Maybe not. It's there.
I'm so sorry.
It's not happening. Sorry.
Sneeze right when I start talking.
It's gonna eventually.
I remember in my notes before we learned
Shut the fuck up. You don't get to talk.
we have to clear our throats. I remember in my notes. God damn! I remember in my notes about Martin Hatch. I initially thought he had some sort of like I wrote down it was something like religious or like magical, like some sort of backing that I couldn't quite figure out.
You guys are way more conspiracy theorists with these games than I am. Like for sure, because
It connects, man.
I was just like, he's got something else going on. Can't really figure out what it is yet, but he's definitely got other.
Like this connects
other
to the root
motivations.
of the world.
I know, and I kind of like playing through the game as a little more of like a dumb guy to a degree, because then it's like,
Huh.
it is, and I'm when you come to those realizations, they're more like, oh, that's
Yeah, it does feel more severe. Yeah, for sure.
when I'm not trying to make forced connections in my head.
And speaking of forcing connections, I'm trying to remember in Control if there was a hierarchy that mimics this relationship between Serene and Hatch, and their kind of two groups.
Yes.
Was there
Yeah,
a
for sure.
former director that had bullshit with like another head of research?
Well, I
where
think
they-
there's
like the yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, there's the current director and the current head of research. Right before
You mean
Courtney Hope shows up.
Oh, okay. So you're
There's-
talking about
there's-
Trench and Darling,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that.
but they seemed like they were aligned in their visions.
No. Not
no.
As you get further into the game.
Yeah.
Am I misremembering something?
It seems
Yeah,
more like,
essentially.
sorry.
We're getting so off topic. Let's just say,
Are we though?
look, because we did 7.5 hours on Control.
We sure did.
Watch that video.
Oh.
You and I already had this discussion, but let's just say that all the way going back to whoever you explore in the Foundation, I can't remember his name, Ashmore, Ash,
Northmore.
but Ash,
Oh, Dr. Ash, yeah.
Ash and Northmore,
Ashmore. Sean?
all the way back to that administration, up until the administration right before Courtney shows up, Jesse Faden shows up.
Yep.
There is a lot of that sort of stuff going on all the way through.
Yeah, that just seems to be the dynamic between head of research and it just seems. I mean, it's just a classic trope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's also it definitely is touched on in other Remedy games. I think.
Yeah.
Sick.
Anyway, let's get into Act 1.
All right.
So I didn't write down the names of the acts.
I did not either, and I didn't write down the names or like divisions between any of the chapters because it's just not really clear when you enter. Not always. Some of the chapters.
Not at all.
Sometimes it'll be like chapter 4, and I'm like, why is it telling me this time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it hasn't told me until now which fucking chapter I'm in.
There was different times that, yeah.
I think
I'd,
each-
like, do the pause menu. I'm like, oh, I'm in the second act now, or second part. I should say second part.
Yeah, I think there's 3 parts
acts are
in each
broken up.
act.
Yeah, 3 or 4. There might have been a couple with 4.
I feel
May
like
have
there
been.
wasn't a set amount each one. I think you're right.
Yeah.
There's at least 3,
At least 3.
maybe
Sorry.
more.
But so in Act 1, we start out, Jack Joyce has been summoned to the fictional city of Riverport by his longtime friend, Paul Serene. Paul has a top secret project that he wants Jack's help with. We soon discover that this project... Oh. Is your leg falling asleep?
I thought Jordan was shaking out a stinker.
Just a turd going down my pant leg. I'm trying to hide it underneath Matt's bench.
Rolling it under the carpet. He's narrating right now.
We soon find out that this secret project is a goddamn time machine. After an initial successful demonstration of how this time machine works, the machine then malfunctions, trapping Paul Serene inside. Suddenly, Jack's estranged brother, William Joyce, appears out of nowhere. Apparently, the time machine was a project started by William Joyce, but a miscalculation in Serene's work has caused a fracture in time. During the time machine malfunction, both Paul Serene and Jack Joyce are exposed to chronon radiation poisoning,
Like the Hulk.
leaving them permanently changed and giving them what amounts to time-related superpowers.
Suddenly their hands get all squares. For him, they're like, ugh.
They look like the Thanos thing. The
yeah, the
when he
triangle.
snaps people
It
away.
does look like that. And Polaris.
And Polaris.
Yeah, I was like, my mind went to Control because of the geometric, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the way that your
The mandala.
the gun changes, you know what I mean? Your
Yeah.
service weapon changes.
Oh,
was
yeah.
kind of the way that your hands would suddenly be like,
Totally.
There's a lot of shared imagery, as we'll get into.
as we've already
Yeah,
gotten into.
and the top secret time machine lab is then raided by soldiers who are affiliated with Monarch, a large corporation that has been taking over Riverport for the last decade or so. Jack and William attempt to escape, but a second, future version of Paul Serene shows up and, presumably, kills William Joyce. Jack, however, is able to escape and eventually runs into Beth Wilder, a Monarch agent, as we mentioned, who has secretly defected and is trying to work against Paul Serene. So you show up, you're at Riverport U. I don't know what it's called. It's like,
University, yeah.
State University of Riverport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Community college.
SUNY Riverport.
so there's a giant historic library that Monarch's been buying up everything. So Monarch owns the school pretty much, or is a huge investor in the school, because there's like Monarch staff are speaking. Like Dr. Amaril's scheduled to speak at the school.
And Dr. Kim clearly had some sort of,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Presence there.
Dr. Kim is a now deceased researcher at Monarch, and
I
also
believe he was the head of research.
Yes.
and also Paul Serene is like basically got like a wing of the school named after him, and he's like,
I mean, they built a fucking time machine in the middle of the university, so it's like...
no one knows that though.
I thought we just said that.
Yes, but the public doesn't know
Oh,
that.
okay, the kids at the school's like, they do.
Right. So
Mark knows that. Shut up.
so when you show up at the university, there's a protest going on, and students have organized a protest being like, don't tear down our library.
Yeah.
Monarch wants to destroy the library for some reason.
Who knows?
It's fucking bullshit, man.
Well, the reason that they want to destroy the library we'll get into later, but...
Which I didn't understand until towards the end of the game.
There's a few things you don't understand until towards the end of the game. I think, at least.
I had a lot of big clicks right at the end.
Yeah.
Click. I watched Click starring Adam Sandler and I fucking
Very
cried.
similar concepts.
Very similar concepts,
If you
yeah.
think about it, it's
a
just
lot-
the Quantum Break movie.
It was originally a licensed game.
So something I went fucking deep on the
Dark web.
dark web, and I came back a changed man, and not for the better.
No.
I'm sure.
So this was the first Remedy game I played. So after playing the Remedy catalog and returning to this game, I was like, I'm going to go deep in looking for Easter eggs and references. And
They're really hidden in this game.
well, there's a few that are. There's some deep ones I haven't seen mentioned online, and I was very proud of myself for finding. But the game starts out, so initially, like we mentioned, Remedy wanted to do Alan Wake 2. They wanted to marry live action and gameplay, and they had all these ideas, and there actually is we mentioned it many times on this channel, but there's a prototype sort of concept pitch video that was shown, and it starts out with this live action stuff, and then shows the gameplay, and a lot of the gameplay elements is very reminiscent of the sort of things you'd see in Quantum Break. Quantum Break was Alan Wake 2. They just had to pivot and change the IP and redevelop the idea and turn it into something else. But because of that, and because Remedy knew how important it was, the game does start out with a massive Alan Wake Easter egg.
Yeah. Wow, dude, yeah. So my experience with this, and we'll get into it, I knew going into it, I think Matt maybe mentioned to you and I, that you're like, yeah, there's some Alan Wake stuff in there, but you very much downplayed it, I think, because you didn't want to spoil anything. And I was like, cool, I'm going to keep my eyes open. I'd like to see this Alan Wake stuff. Like the second set piece you go to.
You just turn on the fucking TV
Turn
and
on
it's
a
like,
TV.
Alan Wake. Alan Wake. You're like, oh.
Yeah, so the first thing you see...
I was like, I can't believe they were so forward about it. And it's such a Remedy thing to do.
It's a concept demo trailer kind of thing, like a proof of concept kind of, basically they described it as, the type of like mood and elements that we'd like to see in an Alan Wake sequel.
Yeah.
This was back in 2014 or 15 that they shot it, I believe. And the little bit we've seen from Alan Wake 2, now that it's been confirmed, like 7 or 8 years later.
Very much in line with.
Yeah.
I found. I watched it right before we started filming. Badass. First off, it's like 3 minutes long. Really cool. We see our boy Sam Lake playing Alex Casey, the star of the Alan Wake books.
And I do believe James McCaffrey's voice is in there for a moment.
Really? Okay. Oh, I think that.
I never pick up on that stuff.
I didn't initially either.
You guys are always so laser
It's
focused.
because I get little goosebumps when I hear him. Sound smash pain.
Pants get a little tighter.
Yeah, we see mostly just like giant flashes of various scenes. We see like Alex Casey and another female detective like working on some sort of case. Not really sure what it is. Seems like they're after Alan Wake, but you also see what appears to be Mr. Scratch with an Ilkavilli with a beard. He can look fucking intimidating. He's a scary looking guy sometimes.
Very similar to the final frames of the Alan Wake 2 teaser trailer that was released late last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had that same thought.
Yeah, so it's cool.
you
That's
can see
pretty
Alan-
fucking sick.
You see Alan in the American Nightmare garb as well. His little white shirt.
That's why I think it may have been shot around the same time and put away for later.
For sure.
around the same time as American Nightmare.
But also, something that I noticed is you have these, and this is just a little bit of world building, and of course, Remedy has said, don't take that as the official Alan Wake 2 trailer. This is just like basically an Easter egg. And just to talk about this concept, like, Quantum Break is not in the Remedy connected universe, in the official canonical like thing that they're building between AWE and Control, where it's like,
Okay.
you know, that is a established thing that they own the IPs, and there is no vagueness about those games being connected.
I think Alan Wake mostly exists it does in our current reality, in real life. It's a video game, I think, because you can see later on there's a woman in an office playing the game.
Yeah. Well, let me finish, because that you're kind of wrong and kind of right.
All right, like always.
So Quantum Break,
Our current reality, like the game, or like the world we live in? You and me. The reality we experience? Or
Yes.
both.
I was like, because obviously Alan Wake's a fucking game in real
Yeah, I'm
life.
saying.
No, but in the reality of Quantum Break,
Yes. Okay.
Alan Wake is also a video game.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
However,
nice.
in the reality of
really
Quantum
weird.
Break, Alan Wake is also an author who sells books, and people
fuck
all around
me.
the game, in the TV show and in the game, will have copies of The Sudden Stop on their bookshelves.
Emily Burke had you can see that was the first time I saw it. Emily Burke in Liam's house has
Right. They're all over.
Giant
They're all
book.
over.
Yeah.
So it exists as both, because this is like, it's like the Remedy connected universe exists in Quantum Break, but Quantum Break does not necessarily exist in the RCU
Okay.
officially. You know, that's why you'll see a lot of Easter eggs, but those Easter eggs do inform your understanding of the canonical stuff. It's very murky, and that's why I think a lot of people are like, it's not connected. Well, it is connected. It's just like not, you know, there's the legal, you know, there's like layer 1, and then there's the deeper, more, you know, foggy layers where it's like, well, how does that connect? And, you know, like for instance, one of the flyers that you find early on the campus, and I didn't see this written down anywhere online, Bravura Security Services.
What, really?
Yeah.
I feel like I noticed that.
Wow, I didn't.
Is it when
notice
you're
that.
reading about they're like the informational things about Monarch
Fuck.
or whatever?
You mean
or-
before you even go in the building?
Yeah, they're just outside. There's bulletin
all
boards.
over the
Yeah.
fucking
I totally
And
read
one of them
that
is for
and
Bravura Security.
Totally missed
And it's
that.
like, is that Jim Bravura from Max
Is he
Payne?
retired now and running a private security company?
It would make sense. But also, in reality,
Oh yeah.
no.
No, because
It is just an Easter egg,
he's already
and
dead
he
by this
technically
point.
would have been dead, but that's where it's like, there is the official canon, and then there's all the other stuff that's kind of like swirly, and that's sort of where like the multiverse sort of concept comes into play, where it's like, yeah, there's like the one official canonical reality.
Right.
But then there's all these other layers, and so you're going to see a lot of that as we go through the game, where it's like, how does Alan Wake exist as both a video game that people are literally playing in the offices of Monarch, and then also exist as an author where people in the game world where they're playing the video game also have the book by Alan Wake, and then also beyond that, there's like Paul Serene, and you see these posters all throughout. There's a Old Gods of Asgard tribute band
he's
that
wearing
exists
the Stormcrow.
Yeah.
that is performing in Riverport.
Yeah.
And why doesn't the reality make sense? Because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, even the little clip or show you see of like the Alex Casey show kind of seems weird too, because the part of the concept of Alex Casey's show, the show is that Alan Wake is trapped in the, you know what I mean, the dark place or whatever. So it's like, it's self-aware of the events of the Alan Wake game, you know what I mean, in a show that's supposed to be written about by Alan Wake, you know what I mean? So
Right.
it
It
is, like you said, it's kind of jumbled.
there's no consistency, so don't try to make too much sense of it. Just
Yeah.
go, hey,
Cool Easter egg.
that's cool. That's
Maybe
fun. That's
one
fun.
of the few times in Remedy games that you can say, like, that is just a little,
It is just a
cool
little
thing.
fun thing.
Right.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, like the Bureau from Control does exist in a different form in Quantum Break. They're the Bureau. They're the Federal Bureau of Altered World Events, and you will see AWE graffiti all over Quantum Break.
Do they reference the Bureau? I mean, I saw the AWE.
They do in in a document. Yeah.
Maybe I missed it, or I was exhausted from
It is
reading so
a
much.
single line in a document that you need to view in the menu. It's not up front. It's not on an email or anything.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit obscured, but you can see that there are the building blocks that will inform your understanding of the canon stuff.
The good bones.
You know?
Yep.
So it's all kind of murky and confusing. But one thing that I think is really fun is they're doing all this. When you see Alex Casey, FBI agent, and he's an FBI agent in control as well, that's cool that they, that's again informing your understanding of like what's happening in the canon stuff. He has Paul Serene's Ram statue with him in an evidence box.
Oh, I noticed that, but
That's
I
wild.
didn't draw the connection. Yeah, it's in the back in the left
And so Paul Serene
front.
has this like Ram statue that was like given to him by Jack, and it's like this like object that they pass back and forth. And if you look deep enough into the documents in Quantum Break, it does seem that it's an object of power.
Okay.
The Ram statue.
Yeah,
No
or an
shit.
altered item. It's hard to say exactly like where it falls, but it has
that.
supernatural qualities.
I didn't have that filter on in my head when I was thinking about that. Damn.
There's
if I played through a second
you'd have to really go through the documents. It's not mentioned specifically, but you see it show up so many times, and they mention it in different ways, and they mention that it like alters behavior of people who get around it,
I fucking
which is
read that and I didn't even.
and
think
that was years before Control. Although the Control was in production for like 7 years, so there probably was some crossover between the writing of both games, and obviously it wasn't the final version of what we know Control to be today. But you can see where the ideas sort of brush past each other and inform the different realities. So I just want to get that out in front now, so we know as we talk about like all the weird Easter egg shit, like what does it mean?
Yeah.
It's mostly just fun Easter eggs.
But sometimes it's not.
But sometimes it's not. And either way, it does help to understand the canon stuff.
Yeah.
The canon stuff and the non-canon stuff somehow are equally important, which isn't really a thing usually in like fandoms. Usually it's like, well, people make up their own shit, and then like there's what the creators say. But in this, it's all kind of it's different layers, but they're all like on the same plane of relevance.
There's 2 official Elder Scrolls novels that are like not canon.
Brilliant.
I've read, like, what I'm saying is I've read them, and like as I was reading it, I was like, what's this have to do with Elder Scrolls? I was like, I don't know what this is. Cool, great book.
Right.
But so generally that's how things are.
I got to take a fat piss. So I'm gonna...
Fat piss, fat shit.
So you make your way through this little campus area. You're seeing all the Easter eggs. You're picking up on little hints and bits and pieces.
I think I spent an hour here before I went inside.
I spent a good amount of time really checking it out.
There's a lot to see, and if you're a keen-eyed player, basically all the people that we mentioned in the opening statements about the cast, with the exception of Emily Burke and unborn baby Burke, are all here. Martin Hatch is standing under a streetlight, and he disappears.
Oh, wow, I forgot about that, yeah.
Liam Burke is like fucking mean mugging outside of the campus.
Yeah, he's pissed.
You guys have you can interact with him. And something that I liked a lot of the times is if you interact with somebody who there's only one interaction, if you linger or come back, they have another line of dialogue added on. Or like I think you get Liam's like inner monologue for a moment one of the times when you walk back up to him. Like if you linger near him, he'll be like, "Come on, man. Just fucking walk away. Just like leave it alone." Like he's like, "Why are you trying to?"
He's probably under extreme stress at that moment.
Yeah.
In that specific situation, yeah.
And then, the...
I like Liam's character. I didn't need to say that right there. Please continue.
You see Amy Ferrara, who is the...
Ferraro.
Ferraro?
Yeah.
Ferrero Rocher.
That's how I remembered it.
Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of Ed Ferrara.
I'm talking about TNA!
Wow. Anyway... You see Amy Ferraro, and she's the person who is leading the protest against Monarch.
Yeah.
And also, somewhere around there, you do see Nick Marsters. Marsters? Yeah. I don't know why it sounds so weird.
Marsters, yeah.
Nick,
Sound weird.
though, the taxi driver, who, if you choose the PR path, you basically won't see Nick again.
I found
didn't.
this out, yeah.
And if you
That's
choose
how
the
I chose.
hardline path, Nick will become one of your buddies, and Nick is played by the same guy who played Dylan in Control.
Oh, okay.
His name's
And
like
Irrelevant.
Tim Dury or
you're-
something?
Tim Curry.
Tim
You
Curry.
got it.
I think it's
Last
Drury even, but
Something like that. Sorry, buddy, you're a great actor. Who was he in this opening scene?
he's a taxi driver.
Where, like, is he at a like, where, like,
You get dropped off by a taxi, don't you?
wow.
Oh, that
Yeah.
might be it.
Holy
It's
shit,
like
that's
you get dropped
crazy.
off by a taxi at.
You're
Yeah,
right.
and
Because you
you
can't-
I think
because
you
you come
see
from
him
the airport.
again very toward the end, maybe like when time's frozen or something, or when you're leaving. But essentially, he was at one point one of the stand-ins. Like they wanted Shawn Ashmore, then they couldn't get him, then they could get him, and he was one of these stand-in facial models for Shawn Ashmore during the early development of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so you might have seen promo footage of him as Jack Joyce.
It's also, if you see images of him, it's a little hard to recognize him as Dylan Faden because he has hair, whereas Dylan Faden's nothing.
Yeah, so essentially...
That's so mind-blowing, though. I guess we'll get to it, but the fact that he will not be in the game, for the most part, aside from that initial
Well,
interaction.
neither will Amy,
Wow.
aside from that interaction.
Depending on
We'll get into that, though, as we get to the junction point. So you go through the campus, the lawn there, basically, where the protest's happening. There's drunk college kids. There's collectibles, and you get a really good feel for wow, this game is fucking dense. Like,
Yes.
before you even get inside the first building, you have, like you said, like an hour's worth of just walking around, talking to NPCs, like
Yeah.
finding stuff, reading little environmental things.
Yeah, and you get there's the placards right outside the front door that are like,
Explain
you
the
read all
characters.
about Dr. Kim, you read all about Paul Serene, and you know what I mean?
Dr.
They're-
Amaral as well.
Yes, and their
you
roles
get
and
all the major
yeah.
characters presented to you in this first act,
Yeah,
and most of them in the first opening minutes.
I think I've copy and paste this. I've probably said this for every single Remedy game, but I think it's important to always recognize that like it's so amazing that the set dress, like the things that would just be something you run by in any other game, matter so much, and it's so well done. Those are all characters
It's the
that you run
attention to
into
detail.
later.
Yeah.
And I almost feel conditioned from other games that I've played to ignore that shit because a lot of times, even if it's like, oh, funny, that's, maybe it's a little joke thing, or it's like, oh, this building was made in 1970. Who fucking cares? But in this game, and all the Remedy games, it matters, and I really appreciate that.
When I first played, I was like, oh, Martin Hatch. Like, I don't know who he is, but I was like, oh, this guy must just be like some school official.
I read about Henry Kim, and I was like, oh, he's like a scientist guy. It sounds like he died. I wonder what happened. And it's like, that's what the game talks about.
I thought Burke was just like some like security guard or
Asshole
something.
guy
Like
getting
I
walked
I
by.
didn't
Yeah.
like I didn't think, oh, these are like high level Monarch employees.
Yeah.
I misheard his name at the beginning, so I thought it was William, and in my notes I was like, fucking 2 characters named William, and
Come
like
the
didn't
fuck
give
on.
it, and like was just like, I'm never gonna see that guy again.
Yeah.
And then I went back in my notes and edited his name once I got to like episode 1 where it was just about Liam Burke,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh
literally.
fuck.
Didn't expect him to be a main character at all.
So
and another strength of these games, you could just walk by all that shit if you wanted to. If you didn't want to, you could still enjoy
Yeah.
the game.
It's
That's something
optional.
Like as my
Still
like,
have a great
that
experience.
I've talked about in our past discussions is that like I do often enjoy just kind of going through the game and experiencing it at certain points.
Yeah.
And I like that it gives you the option to do either, and you can kind of switch back and forth between either one. You know what I mean? 'Cause
yeah,
I missed
it doesn't lock you out.
other than what we're talking about right now, which is like the opening kind of set piece, you know what I mean, of the outside of the university. Other than that, in this first act, I really didn't spend any time doing any exploration.
right?
And I didn't feel like I missed anything once I got to Act 2 and started to explore more, and it kind of fills you in, or you kind of make the connections, you know?
They got a perfect flow of
Yeah.
just letting you play the game how you want to and still enjoying it no matter how you choose.
So eventually you do go in and you see Paul Serene. He greets you. He's wearing the Stone Crow shirt, the Children of the Elder God. And you're like, damn, Paul, you're kind of a big deal now, aren't you? And he's like, oh, it's nothing, but he's being modest.
big deal.
And as you go deeper and deeper into the facility, you start to notice that there's like Monarch branded hardware everywhere. I don't know if you guys picked up on this. I didn't on my first playthrough, but as you get into the promenade.
Yep. Project Promenade.
Yeah, which is like their code word for the time machine. You start seeing like Monarch branded PCs and shit like right outside the lab, and it's like if you're picking up on stuff, like I don't think that they really are super transparent about what Monarch's doing.
They're not at all. In fact, it's like when you're outside and you're reading a lot of the protest posters that are up, a lot of them touch on the fact where they're like, Monarch is just some mysterious big corporation that's come in here, and we don't know why, but for whatever reason, they're able to influence everything that's happening.
They've been buying up everything.
Yeah.
They're just they make it clear in the beginning that like nobody really is clear on what Monarch's
Their
doing.
motives are,
Not even what their motives are, but like
what they
it's
are.
one of
What's
those
their
companies-
purpose?
Yeah, where you're like, you just hear about a company and you're like, oh, what do they do? And they're like, oh, you know what I mean? It's all about projections. They're a projection company. They're
Yeah,
like
they seem like
projectors, and you're like, no, they make projections and they tell you what, and you're like, that's a whole company. You know what I mean? Like there's 1,000 people working in this
Maybe
building.
investments and stuff. You're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is actually going on there?
But that's the kind
Right.
of thing where
And
they're
then
like, it's just
They're organizing
technology.
militias.
Yeah.
You're like,
it's
well, what-
Monarch Technologies.
Why is this that
Like, which
murky?
technology?
It's solutions. It's Monarch Solutions.
Oh,
You're like,
solutions, yeah,
what the
sorry.
fuck? Like, what does that mean?
What's your
And then,
solution?
obviously we're very far away from talking about it, but when you finally see the master plan and how they came to where Monarch landed, you're like, wow, I thought it was fascinating how they managed to do all that. But,
Totally. So, like I said, he brings you in, he shows you the fucking time machine.
Yeah.
And I think they even mentioned like early on stuff like the CFR and like, but you didn't know what that was, so you're just
They use some
mumbo
like
jumbo.
Yeah, they use like nomenclature and they use like certain words that are like cool. Talk to me like a fucking person, scientist, science man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I don't know if they mentioned the CFR that early, because I don't think they know about the CFR yet.
he mentions Will doesn't refer to it as that. No, Will.
Paul?
Yeah, Will. Will doesn't refer to it as that, but he mentions
No.
that he has like the lifeboat or the whatever.
The countermeasure.
The countermeasure.
Well, that's the thing too, and similar to Control, with the way there's like different nomenclature, as in like the more esoteric members of the oldest house, and the more non-esoteric members. They have different, they want to use more clinical terms for things that people had more, religious terms for before.
mystical.
It is funny, that he calls it the countermeasure. They call it the chronon field regulator. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, it's the same device.
Yeah.
But they of course had this CFR, I don't know, it's corporate speak.
Yeah, and some people refer to it as the lifeboat. You know what I mean? And like there's
Well, it's the lifeboat.
Like a general term for it?
well, the lifeboat is like the area
Yeah,
that the CFR was supposed to.
but
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
we are getting ahead of ourselves. But it was funny that the countermeasure is just Hadron.
It's
It's
so
it's
not-
it's
Like what it looks exactly the same. I was like, oh,
I remember
just mini.
from the courtyard. I took a note saying that the building that it was contained within. I'm like, that kind of looks like Hadron.
yeah.
And then you get in and I see this device and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So basically, you get in. He's like, Jack, I need you to work the time machine, and you have to actually pull down the thing.
Yeah,
And the
that's
game
fun.
makes you get involved in a way. And so what he does is he goes in, and then a version of him shows up.
And they have a little.
He's from 2 minutes. I think in the past.
He's from 2 minutes in
Future.
the future.
Right. Oh, and
the
then
first time
he
he's
has to send himself back through. And so basically it's like a loop, and depending on which way you're walking around the loop, you're going back or forth in time.
Yeah.
But as he goes back in to complete the loop, it malfunctions, causing the fracture. And so time is just kind of frozen. Items are floating. And I love the fact that you can shove an item that's floating, and it'll float away and then come back. The particle effects and everything, and the way everything works is crazy fucking tech. I've never seen this handled so well in a video game.
Yeah.
It gives you opportunities to ruin people's days too later in the game when there's more stutters. where you'll be walking by. There's there's one I specifically remember where you're walking by a guy who's like in the midst of dropping some files.
Oh, yeah.
And you can walk up, and I just kept running back and forth through the files, and they were
Messing
just
them up.
going everywhere. And I was like, haha.
I love that he was. There's lots of subtle humor with specifically the time. They're called time stutters, where time temporarily stops for most people. Yeah, I remember that scene in particular. He's like, "Oh no, my TPS report."
Yeah, and I'm just like, fuck your TPS reports.
I also
Monarch
like,
piece of shit.
on occasion, you can disarm soldiers when they're
That was
frozen.
You're running
badass.
just, like,
You
take
can't
their
through
ammo
the whole
from them.
game, though, which is a little frustrating.
That was kind of
Yeah, it's specifically when you are like in combat sections in the midst of it. You know what I mean? I've noticed, and then also like if you have that gun,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Because you're taking the ammo from.
Yeah.
them or
Still,
whatever.
the first time I did it, I was like, "That's so fucking cool."
Yeah.
'Cause it is like, why wouldn't you just do? If there's a bunch of enemies, they have guns, and time stops. Why wouldn't you just go take all their guns?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
what I would have
Yeah.
done.
You can't kill them though.
Punch
No,
them in
you
the nuts a
can't.
couple
Frustrated
times.
me. I'd just be fucking unloading on them, and I'm like,
I did
Yeah.
it's just
try.
gonna be a
I
lot.
tried.
The rules are a little inconsistent, but it looks fucking cool. So,
Yes, it looks great.
like we said, I gave the little recap, but William Joyce shows up. He's like, time is an egg. They broke the egg. This is bad. We got to keep going. You don't really know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
He's trying to fill you in, but he can't. He doesn't have the words to explain it to someone, and you're still trying to be like, a time machine?
Yeah.
A time machine?
And you
He's
kind
on
of
the
like
10th floor, and you're just walking in the building.
you kind of have this like you have this kind of, because he's your brother and he's always kind of been a recluse and a weirdo, you know what I mean, and like socially inept to a degree.
Yeah.
You have this part where you're like, can you just shut the fuck up, Will? And like you're exaggerating, like
Yeah.
come on, Will, you're being crazy again.
time machine?
He does this whole thing where he's like, what the fuck do you mean time's broken? Time's an egg. What do you want me to? And like he is definitely being cryptic, but he also has that like that wall up Jack does. You know what
Totally.
I mean? Where he's like, I don't really want to trust you.
Yeah.
That we have an estrange relationship.
There's a
It's
clear
weird. I don't, you know.
division between them that you don't really learn the details about until way later.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all very cryptic.
Maybe a weird time to mention it, but did you guys perceive Paul as like a salt and pepper like man, whereas like Jack I kind of perceived as like a 24-year-old guy? Like they were supposed to be childhood friends, and they were supposed to be roughly the same age.
I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be the same age. I did. I did perceive Paul as being much older than Jack.
Yeah, but
Okay,
but,
then
but they
maybe
also
I'm-
touch on a lot about them growing up together.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
Paul
that's
and
why I was,
Jack.
and I get
Right, but I don't know what that means.
I guess
Yeah.
they never specified
Because
that
it's
they
like,
were
do you
an
mean
age
like you were in
apart.
elementary school together, or do you mean like you started hanging out when you were like 16?
Yeah,
Right, because I also know guys who are like in their early 30s who have a full head of gray hair. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
didn't clash for
It
me.
was odd.
But I remember being confused, and also Will seems like he's a different age as well. Like,
Well, they're not twins.
Well,
I
is,
know.
yeah.
What I'm saying, in comparison to he's not the. He doesn't seem to be the same age to Paul, as Paul to me. It seemed like they were all three different ages. So the fact that they grew up together, I was trying to reconcile that. I guess a response would be that, as we'll get into more time discussion, Paul has lived a lot longer than anybody else here. For
It
reasons we'll
doesn't,
get into later.
It
So
doesn't
he's more grizzled.
necessarily touch on how that affects you physically.
That
As far
too.
as, I mean, like it does in the, we'll get into how it affects you physically.
How the Chronon.
The chronon exposure,
Yeah.
like as a sort of, chronon's a sort of radiation. Because it talks about in this opening scene how the Meyer-Joyce particle is what your brother discovers, and that's effectively what makes up time.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I mean?
And the field,
Yeah.
like
and
magnetic field.
it gets pretty dense. As far
It-
as
it
like,
does.
You're like, I'd actually have to study this to.
They did a lot of consulting with scientists.
Yeah,
And
it
you
felt
know,
that way.
it's not totally sound, but,
No, but it
it's
makes
enough that
sense
it makes sense within the game, its own logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he connects with you, Will, that is, and then the Monarch soldiers show up. And they're popping off.
Yeah.
But you realize that you've been changed.
You're
And
now-
at some point, someone goes to shoot you, and Will, and you're able to do a bullet time, not a shoot dodge,
Not a shoot
but a
dodge.
bullet time sort of dodge, and save your brother.
you cap the guy.
And you cap him. And so it's like, one, you already were a guy who knew how to use guns. So that's explained. You know, they mentioned you had a little gunplay, you got a little rowdy, you're a little bit of a criminal.
a little silly goose.
But now, you've also got these time powers. And it seems like Will is like, oh shit. Like, he understands you've been corrupted.
Yes.
Basically, because he understands how it all works. And Jack isn't totally aware of what's going on. Like, in terms of, like, he just doesn't understand it, but he's like, I can do stuff with time now?
Yeah.
He hasn't, like, it's not at the point where he has any sort of, like, conscious control over it yet, really, you know, especially this very first instance. But he's starting to realize that it's not just that I can move while everybody else is frozen. And it also an interesting thing where he pulls Will out of the time freeze, but then I believe he's unable to pull somebody else out in this first chapter. He, like, goes to grab someone else, like a soldier or something, for whatever reason.
He couldn't free
and
them?
he couldn't.
Oh, okay.
He was able to with, and I don't know if that's because he doesn't have control over his abilities yet, if that's what it's touching on, you know what I mean? Or if they have to be Chronon-affected people, since Will was already present, you know what I mean? Had been around Chronon and been in the...
You got some shit there.
And
that
same
might
with,
make sense.
Beth.
later on in the game, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember her fucking name.
It's hard to say.
It is. It was, that part I didn't really have a full grasp on, but maybe it was only Chronon-affected people who could move about unless they had...
Right.
You know what I mean?
Hard to say. So eventually, you know, you're basically you're trying to escape.
Yeah.
The campus is being raided. You do find the Alan Wake chalkboard as you're going through.
Damn.
Which has so much information that ties in things that we learn in American Nightmare, things we learn in AWE and Control, things that are from the This House of Dreams blog, and stuff that is written on there is canon. That's
Yeah,
the thing. It's
absolutely.
like the Quantum Break is not canon. That chalkboard is canonical information that you can take to the Remedy Bank.
I probably spent I think I sat there for like 10 minutes just like zooming in and reading all of that because I was
Pretty
like,
interesting
damn.
shit. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, their games are like really connected. Like,
Yeah.
because I heard that they were somewhat connected.
Because you played Quantum Break pretty early on in your Remedy experience, right?
It was the first one.
Oh, it was your first? Okay.
Yeah.
Even
I was just looking for a good action shooter, you know?
Which, I mean, it's really not... The combat is, like we talked about already, but it's really... It is a solid just...
Yeah.
If you just like, you know what I mean, action games with a solid story, then, like, you'll like this. You don't need to
absolutely,
have
yeah.
all the extra shit going into it, you know?
No,
Still
but
just a great game.
it's a cool little thing to find. You know, we discussed it. I discussed it, I should say, at length in my Remedy Connected Universe video. And there's also a great video by Gaming University that breaks it down in depth. You know, I touch on some of the stuff that's relevant to the Connected Universe specifically, but there's much deeper like literary and cultural references in there and things that will enrich your appreciation for, you know, what Remedy's putting out there. There's a lot of shit on that chalkboard.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did not take the time to really... I saw it and was like, oh, there's clearly Alan Wake references in there, you know what I mean? Like, that's clearly, but I was like,
It
I
hits
don't
kinda-
have the awareness either.
It hits at a little bit of an inconvenient time because you are right in the middle. We're escaping. Oh my god, we gotta
Well,
go.
that
Will.
was-
And you do come back around later.
Yeah,
that was
that's
my
true.
major complaint in this opening scene was that I found none of the extra shit because it is so... It does give you that impression that
They're right on your
if
tail.
you don't
Like,
hurry up, like, you and Will are going to die, or at a certain moment, just Will's going to die once the two of you
And
are
in many
separated.
games, that would be the case.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
like enemies would spawn or, you know.
Yeah.
But here, it's not what's going to fucking happen.
There's also, like, I've noticed during stutters, he says things like, I better get there before the stutter ends. And it makes you think as though the stutters have, like, a time limit, or an in-game time limit on them, you know what I mean?
But
But
they-
it's
yeah.
triggered by
Leaving
points,
the-
you know what I
leaving the
mean?
area,
When you,
Yeah, that's such a tricky thing to navigate.
Or I get why they have them say those things, because they're trying to... It is realistic, and they're trying to move it along, but when it takes me out a little bit when there isn't the realism to match up with that. Like, it isn't like... a
There's
time
better
limit.
ways to hide
Yes.
to hide it. To hide the fact that things are scripted. You know?
You reminded me that every now and then when you collect a Chronon source, Jack will say something like, "Yeah, all right." You know, he'll
Yeah,
just
pretty
have a
much like
little
every
moment.
time. He's like, oh, sweet.
But there was a couple goofy moments where if I collected a Chronon source while in the middle of a dialogue, number one, like Will was saying something kind of drab, you know, like maybe talking about a character death or something, and then I collected a Chronon source, and Jack said, "That's what I'm talking about."
My parents died. That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
Eventually, you know, you think you're going to escape. You get to the library that's going to be demolished, and Paul Serene's there, and it's a different version of Paul Serene, like we mentioned, the Paul Serene from the future, who is evil now.
Yeah, he seems much more. Not that he wasn't like a confident, pompous asshole at the beginning of the game.
But
you know
his
what I mean?
posture, his everything is different.
His outfit.
He changed his clothes, that's for sure.
We should mention that there's like a lot of fighting. You hear a lot of like the university has become a battleground.
Yeah. And they're trying to clear everybody off the campus as well, like the Monarch folk.
Yes.
And they know, and they're like, we're looking for Jack and William Joyce. Like they know that they're there. And you're like, how did they know?
People are putting up a fight, but who are those people? Who are they fighting?
So, yes,
Very subtle.
Planting
very
planting
subtle.
the seed for a big reveal.
sort of.
That was a big reveal to me. I didn't realize it.
So
Keep looking at Mario over here.
I can tell.
He's looking good.
Thank you. So
I can't whistle well.
Was that a
tried? Yeah.
eventually what happens is they detonate the library and Will is crushed in the rubble. And you go, no!
You say, fuck!
You escape
Yeah, you get out because
and you eventually run into Beth Wilder. And she knows who you are and you don't know who she is.
you got no fucking concept.
But essentially she basically helps you, fakes that she's captured you and helps transport you safely out of the area.
Into the like a warehouse on the way to the dry
And
dock.
something like that was unclear to me at the beginning of the game that I think got cleared up for me towards the end, but I'm still a little wishy-washy on, is when you see Paul Serene that first time, is your
The very first time?
No, sorry, when he comes back out, when you see him as like future Paul. You know what I mean? And he in the library when he comes and he captures Will or whatever and then like crushes the fucking, the shit out of Will. I had a moment where I was like, are there two Pauls? You know what I mean? I kind of had that because you see in that moment when they're in the promenade in the college where there are two Pauls for a moment, but then he says, I have to enter the machine to complete the loop. Almost implying that like the two of them can't exist there together for too long.
Right.
But I feel like it didn't explicitly touch on that again or explicitly come out and say like, you can't, you know what I mean? That's not how it works or you can't exist.
Totally. That was never really cleared up entirely for me either.
And it's fair also because I guess they don't really know that much about it because it is a new thing for them.
Right.
To a degree.
And at the end of the game, you do like kind of almost see yourself,
Yeah.
so like you do get that, okay, I guess two can exist at the same time, but how does that work? Should they even be aware of one another?
Yeah.
Probably not.
There's a number of questions that were raised
That's
in this where I'm like,
And is that something to do with why things fucked up?
yeah,
I don't
is it
even
because there was the fracture in time
Yeah.
that we're able to do that, or is
Yeah.
it like, who knows? Because
Maybe
there's so
once-
much. This is such a heady conversation to have. Just the concept of it, you know what I mean?
Totally.
How traveling in time can affect
That's what I was
things
gonna
and
say.
what isn't allowed.
Generally, like if I'm watching a show and they're like, it's time travel now, I usually clock out because I'm just like, this will never add up because messing with time is messy, and it always comes back to like, what do you mean you're the first person to do something? If you go into the past and do something, that would be happening right now.
Right, and so in this, it
I-
uses the premise that you can't go from any time before the time machine was launched.
Right.
Yes,
but it's
there
just
are
even
like
still,
a couple of logical things that like they do kind of fix up a couple things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To be like, you can't. Yeah, never mind.
What I'm getting to is that like, if anyone's gonna do time travel well in a story that you can respect and follow, it is Remedy. I think they did the best you possibly could. But what I'm saying is, if future me came back to right now, I wouldn't go do that and then it happened. He'd be here now. You know what I'm trying to say? But I kept feeling like there'd be times where it's like, what do we do?
Yeah, I
We need-
understand.
Like, I need
Because they touch
me
on
for
that
the
a bit,
future needs
but-
to come back right now. It's like he'd already be there if that was the case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There wouldn't be the first person to do it, and then it would happen. So it's
That's when
messy.
It gets,
Time travel is
well,
really
and that's
messy.
when it gets into the idea of like different timelines. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's how I think it vaguely got cleared up for me later. But I'm still
which is the
I'm still
concept of
wishy-washy. I'm still unclear on it.
quantum realities and stuff like that, and it's
Quantum suicide.
Right, and the thing is, and again, I'm jumping basically to the end of the game, but when you're in that last part, you do, I will just say it, you do eventually revisit the library
Yes.
from a different time, perspective, basically. And Will is like, we can't let ourselves see ourselves. We can't like change what happened.
Yeah.
Like
that's a-
we if we're gonna interact with this world, we can't like,
There's the rule.
get in our own way.
Yeah, there's a rule that whatever event you're trying to prevent from taking place, it'll always happen. If it already happened, it'll happen. Which
Yeah.
even still, I'm just like,
And it makes sense.
what does that mean?
Yeah. And
It means you basically can't change fate.
Yeah.
yes, but that's kind of the whole. We're getting way too into it.
I know, but it's
that
hard
is-
not
That
to.
is kind
But
of like the whole
it makes
debate
sense.
of the game, though. You know what I mean? The
Right.
whole debate of the game is like, can you not change fate?
Like, what
Right.
are the rules?
And it's like, well, there's the countermeasure, which
Works.
it works. How does it work? Well, there's a lot of writing about it.
It's an egg, and
But essentially, that's the end of the first act. Is getting through. Will's dead. You're with Beth. Time is broken. Paul is evil.
yeah.
Paul is dead, and so Paul's not dead. So
They put a double in. It's
you get to the first junction point where you take on the role of Paul Serene.
Yeah, which I would like. The moment that it like started, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be like an elongated cutscene of what's going on with Paul." And then suddenly it was like, "Doof," and you're like behind Paul, third person perspective.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck?
Like, oh!
It was
For
pretty
a
sweet.
second, I was like, "Oh, am I gonna be like God mode?
Yeah.
Like, am I gonna have
Like
all the
super
ability?"
time
You know what I mean?
powers, which
No.
you don't get to do. But
No.
it's so cool playing like all these junctions. It's so cool. All these junction points are badass.
Thank you, Becky.
I was very enthusiastic. It's super cool to jump into the brain of another character.
To jump the bones of Paul.
To jump Paul's good bones.
Boy, oh boy, do you get to know.
You finally get to relive that scene with Mr. Hatch. Because
That's right, we
it's been a Remedy
We
thing.
spoiled the pegging scene already.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, guys. Act 3 ruined. It's really sick because like you got to play as like Mona in Max 2.
Yes.
And that was cool, but it was just kind of like you cover Max. There wasn't anything. But when you play as Paul, you get to make world-changing.
You make game-altering decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
So each junction point, there's two different things. There's quantum ripples, which will basically cause very minor changes in the Quantum Break television show.
Yes.
It's so cool, dude.
And it'll alert you in the episode when you've unlocked all of the ripples for that episode.
That's right.
In the previous act. Because I only did it, I believe, for 2 of the episodes.
Right.
But each time it was like, you've unlocked all the ripples, so you're going to see the full. You're going to have to see all of it here.
And it's basically just like you get like an alternate take in the show, and they shot a bunch of different shit, and it's nothing that actually affects the story drastically.
Yeah.
It's really just like a fun Easter egg. Like one of them is as you're going through and you're escaping with Will, you can go to a chalkboard and he'll be like, "What? They fucked up the math," and like he fixes the thing on the chalkboard.
Matt.
Whiteboard. Later on the show, like you'll hear 2 guys talking in a cafeteria, like, "Hey, did you see someone like fix the equation?"
Yeah.
Who the fuck do that?
That's all it
It
is.
happened during a stutter or whatever.
Yeah. There's a really funny one that I thought that I really
Yeah.
liked later on. But yeah, I
Right.
love those.
Yes,
Which one am I talking about?
the the boner one. It's very
The
good.
boner one. I really
You basically you see a guy and you do make him erect, and then later
in a very funny.
in a very funny way. It's not. It sounds molesty. It's not. It's
not
done.
molesty. No,
It's
no,
done
no.
in a very fun way.
It's all about context, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And no, but but I thought this was a really cool. The junctions, the decision making
right.
points.
So the junctions are the other thing.
So the ripples, small
Yeah,
effect.
sorry, ripples, and then
Junctions are the more important ones that will drastically change the story, both the TV show and the game itself. And the game and the TV show do run parallel most of the time. They don't intersect enough for me to think that the show was 100% necessary.
no, but I did notice because
It was good,
yeah.
but if they removed it, I don't think it would have changed how I felt about the story all that much.
I don't think it would have changed how I felt about the story, but it definitely would have left me with a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's really just more exposition
Yeah,
You know
for
what I
sure.
mean? There's definitely, I don't believe,
It's like world building. And
maybe
then
there's
character
one or
relationships.
two things that are like big reveal. You know what I mean? That we'll get to later.
They could have been worked in like a minor cutscene,
Yes,
though.
or just another document you find.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. But I did notice these things, the junctions, really create, like, it just, like, it guarantees replayability. Because
Yeah.
I finished it and I've already gone back and played through, like, the first 2 junction points to make a different decision. And even though the show isn't, like you said, super, you know what I mean? They did clearly shoot things slightly differently.
A lot of things.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten very far, which is why I'm like not aware of all the changes, but like right away, I went to Junction 2 and changed that decision to the opposite of what I did. Because I kind of went good at first for the very first one, and then second, third, and fourth, all the other junctions, I was like, fuck it. Let's have fun with it, you know what I mean? And so I went with the evil decision or bad decision every time. And it really, like, I'm excited to hear you guys talk about what,
The junction points allow you to really understand that Paul Serene's connection to the Chronon radiation poisoning and the effects of Chronon on his body and everything are very intense, to the point that he is someone who can essentially see all time at once, and he can see different paths and is kind of like stuck with this burden of like, you know, clairvoyance.
Yeah.
Which is, as I look deeper and deeper into other Remedy games, like, it seems like that's what Alan Wake's main power is clairvoyance. And
but he just doesn't understand it as that.
no.
Yeah.
Since we haven't gotten to it yet, I won't specify, but there was a character that could have access to the future events of their life, but they specifically requested that the other person doesn't tell them like about it. He's like, I do not want to know like what you know about my future. And I was just like, damn, I would probably feel the same for the most part. Like, I don't want the burden of knowing.
It's a really interesting thing with the clairvoyance, though, because it doesn't seem as though it is like it's not all powerful, and it doesn't seem like, aside from at the junction points, it doesn't seem like he really has a full grasp on
Maybe
what
it's
he
hazy.
decides to see. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's more like what he sees is just, it'll just happen, and he's
Like
there.
intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, like he's just part of it, and he's like, oh, fuck, this is happening now. And then he's like, okay, I just saw this. Because he points out to Hatch, I believe, around this time, that he's like, they're never wrong. You know what I mean? He's like, sometimes I don't understand them or understand how we're going to get there, what leads to that point, but like what I see always happens.
Yes.
But he doesn't have the full context for those moments.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. So essentially, things at the university didn't go down very well.
not the way they
Monarch agents were popping off. The library blew up. Like, no one knows about the Jack Joyce thing or the time machine.
Yeah.
But people know some shit went down, and Monarch was there with a militarized force.
Yeah.
That is not cool. People were not wanting that to happen.
No.
And so he's presented with a choice. How does Monarch handle this? Do we go hardline and kill all witnesses?
Yeah.
And intimidate anyone else
Just
that we're not murdering? You know?
I feel like in a lot of games they give you a little bit more of a softball on the first decision.
Nope.
Or
Like,
do we
ease you into this, or like, fuck it, do we kill everyone, or
do we go with like a very aggressive PR campaign and try to paint this as a positive, and also, you know, paint William Joyce as a fugitive?
Or Jack Joyce.
Jack Joyce. As a fugitive.
Something I also liked that I noticed was a theme with all of the junction points was, regardless of which choice you made, it seemed like there was still, while a negative for, because in these two specific ones you have PR campaign, where what happens is they're like, we go and we paint Jack to be like a terrorist, effectively, like a domestic terrorist, and we do all this. But because we do that, Jack is going to be forced to go underground and gain access and get the full breadth of what's going on and the full information of what's going on. Whereas, because he's going to meet up with the people who have been talked to, and you know what I mean, by Monarch and pushed down, he's going to learn all this shadow stuff going on. Or we kill everybody right now, and Jack doesn't really quite figure out what's going on at first. It's going to take him longer to get there.
There's no way to
But
tell him what's up.
Monarch will basically be seen
As evil.
and Jack and basically Paul can see like these two possible futures and how each one benefits him and also how each one can bite him in the ass.
Yeah, because in the one, then Jack gets the public support. You know what I mean? And there's
It's never
riots
an
and shit,
obvious, never an obvious like easy choice.
No.
So the first time I played, I did go PR, but the second time I played, I was like, I haven't seen these. I went hardline.
Did they just cap everybody?
So did you guys both pick PR?
I picked PR.
Absolutely,
And this
yeah.
was because this was the only quote unquote good decision I made in the game.
Damn.
So
I always tried to make the least destructive decision, even though it was clearly sometimes,
Harder for Jack,
yeah, yeah.
or implied it would become harder for Jack.
for Paul.
Well, like
I guess both, really,
In the
yeah.
PR campaign, it would be like now Jack's a terrorist and he's got to hide.
Yeah.
But Paul still looks like a good guy.
Yeah.
Right. So if you choose PR, they make Amy from the protest give like a false statement, basically being like Monarch is good, Jack Joyce a terrorist,
I saw him blowing shit up and shooting people.
and you in Act 2 you do connect with her and she's part of your story for a while.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in the next episode. But if you choose Hardline, they shoot her in the head.
Yeah,
and they
hilarious.
show it.
I was like, do they just murder fucking Amy right there?
Does
'Cause that's
Hatch
what I was
just take
curious
her
about.
out?
He
wasn't
just
Hatch, it was like another-
they like make Liam do it or make a grunt do it. I can't remember the scene.
Well, there's like 4 just uniformed Monarch guys with guns
Yeah.
like standing
Yeah.
around her. You know.
But Hatch does order it.
Holy.
Well, they don't
piss.
show it. Do they show it? They definitely show like Martin Hatch getting shot in the fucking face at one point.
They do, yeah. That's
like
later on.
and it's like it's 3D blood splatters, but still.
Right in the eye.
Yeah. Brutal. But yeah, they kill him, and then the role that Amy would have taken on is played by Nick.
Yep.
And he's hilarious, and he has some of the funniest lines in the game, and it's a very different tone.
Yeah.
And it's nice that if you choose the brutal everybody gets murdered thing, they offset it with some comedy.
Oh, man.
And the other thing I'd
wanna
like
see the funny guy.
to know about that is like, it's so interesting because I'd like to see how, I want to play through it so many times to make every possible combination of decisions. Yeah. Because I'm interested to see how my story played out with me starting out making good decisions and switching to shitty ones, or how it would be if I started with Hardline but then went to like being like, nah, let's be nice now. You know what I mean? Like I'd like to see
Yeah.
where those can go, because then you get to see a different development with Nick, or you get to see a different character development with Amy.
Right.
Like, frankly, I didn't really like Amy's character that much.
Yeah, I felt very neutral toward her.
Very
Yeah, she just
kind
comes
of dull.
across as very. She's another
Like
one
that
who-
kind of college student would be.
Yes,
Yeah,
I mean,
actually,
like
it was pretty-
she fits
yeah.
that. She fits the archetype of that like neo-lib. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know what's right. You know,
I think Charlie writes up a bio on her that
Yeah.
you can read later on that is
Yeah.
very like rich parents, but she tries to do like
Yeah, because she's very much like, I'm scared and I don't know what's going on, and then suddenly she's like, follow me, sir, don't worry, I've got a gun, I'll take him out. And
I
I'm
do
like,
protest.
you don't fucking, like, you don't even know how to hold that gun properly, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the first time you've held a gun, you said that 5 minutes ago, and now you're like, don't worry, I got him.
So, we'll get into the effects of those choices, but then
they-
after you...
do they influence your ending? Do they give you a different ending?
No. You have
same
one
ending?
ending.
From what I've read, it's the same, it's
Because-
effectively the same, like, ending.
The,
that's
the
fine.
final scene is the same every time.
Damn, I was hoping,
But everything leading up to it can be drastically different.
I was hoping my final scene was just because of my choices. But we're about to have our final scene, aren't we?
Yes, I was trying to make a smooth transition, but
I ruined it.
well, we just had a little quantum break of our own, induced by the battery dying on the camera. No, not the battery. The memory card filled
Memory
up.
card's
Yeah, I was
filling
like,
up. We got
Yeah,
that battery's
because I was
hardlined into the wall.
I was filming myself doing some other stuff and before this and forgot to clear the memory card.
Yeah, several hours.
But I did clean up. You would never know that I was in that chair.
Asking us to show him where it spits. Show me
He was
where it
recreating the Mr. Hatch scene.
No, but so
Mr. Hatch. Mr. Hatch does
Don't be
sound
stingy
like
now.
Mr. Hatch sounds like a
Mr. Hands, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't look that up.
Let's erase that from your memory.
From your memory card. Anyway.
So once you finish a junction, you go into an episode of Quantum Break. And I wasn't even totally aware that this is really how it was going to be. Like the live action element was not totally apparent to me when I first played the game.
No.
Did you guys like go into this being like, oh, time to watch a 30-minute episode of a TV show?
No, you guys had given me like a really like a loose description that there was a Quantum Break show, but I honestly thought it was like until that point like had gone into it with like being like it is a separate thing that you can like you have to go to their website or go onto YouTube and watch this show in conjunction.
Like Bright Falls.
Yeah, like because there was a book I read when I was younger where certain points in the book, if you went to the link in the story, it would then have a video like a short 20-minute episode going through that, and it was you know what I mean. It was pretty cool. And it was captivating, and I liked it.
And it was TV Guide that you were reading?
Yes, I was reading TV. I really didn't understand the way TV Guide. No, it was like it was some serial killer book because I got really into serial killers when I was like 13.
It was Captain Underpants.
I read the fuck out of those books too.
I know
but they didn't have websites to go to.
Bullshit. That's why they failed. That's why.
But no, I really thought it was like a shitty like sci-fi TV style TV show. You know what I mean? That was like uploaded onto YouTube.
But it kind of is like a Sci-Fi Channel quality show.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe a little bit nicer, honestly.
I would say
there's more craftsmanship.
It's more like if somebody made a TV show that they were like, oh, we're gonna pitch this to Sci-Fi, and then instead it got picked up by USA. You know what I mean?
That's a great way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to be careful with being critical because like it's so fucking hard to make a show and a game that when you try to do all of this and like collaborate with Microsoft and super larger talent than they've ever had in any of the Remedy games, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I'm not saying it sucks by any means. I just mean like it's not in terms of like the budget constraints and the effects and the overall production quality.
It's not Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
But it's fucking pretty good.
It's
I liked
pretty
it.
good, and
I was excited every time I got to watch an episode. I was eager to see the next one.
they didn't shoot in Finland. It was shot by a separate production company that obviously was in touch with Remedy throughout the whole process. But there's behind the scenes videos you can find, and they were like, here's what the environments are, and then they would recreate those game environments in person.
Yeah.
And they do talk. There's one funny anecdote where they, when you make a game, you often white box stuff, and so everything is or gray box, and it's just the untextured 3D models.
Oh yeah.
There was one instance where they had a lamp on a table that was just the untextured model of the lamp. It was a pure white lamp. And then in the show, they took that literally and just made this like untextured pure white lamp. And they're like, that was a placeholder graphic. Like you didn't know that that's not real.
Really,
and,
that's funny.
And just kind of it made its way into the show because it was like, well, what's done is done, and it's kind of funny, so whatever. But those are the kind of hurdles you'd have to jump over trying to do this remote joint tandem production of these two different mediums, trying to find out how to cross them over. This has never been done before or since.
It's incredible. I mean, it's honestly really incredible, especially once if you make different decisions, you know what I mean, at your junction points, you'll notice that they clearly had to. And I can't tell if sometimes they like totally shot.
They did.
Totally differently.
They did.
And it seems other times maybe they just shot a scene and then shot a separate scene that they could kind of pigeonhole into that. You know what I mean? But it seems like there was a mix of those two.
There's a number online where they talk about how many times they all the different alternates they shot. It was an insane number.
The amount of forethought, effort, and planning that has to go into that. I'm not critiquing the show at all when I say it's like a sci-fi show. Like it's like. Fucking A, they nailed it.
No, I haven't watched a sci-fi. I just mean like it would feel at home on the channel in terms of tone.
Yes, that's what I mean. Effectively, I mean is like based on like what the show's about. You know what I mean? It's about time travel and shit, and then also the budgetary restraints. You know what I mean? And special effects they use are very much on par with what you'd see on there.
For sure.
But as far as like the dialogue, I feel like is better. Which like I would like anticipated that because it's Remedy. You know what I mean? And they always have very human interactions.
Yeah.
Whereas like sometimes shit, when you watch stuff like that, it's like, this isn't how people talk to each other. You know what I mean? Human beings don't interact like this. But it seemed like they really did a good job with like...
perfectly waiting for someone to finish their lines before saying their line.
And not just that, but also like their response isn't like I'm pushing the narrative forward. Yeah. It's like, no, this is me as a person being like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
It's all pretty fucking good. Like all the actors are just pretty good. The whole thing is like pretty solid.
Like if you gave me a microscope, I could find a couple takes that I was like,
Yeah, but I mean, you can do that with
But
fucking
with anything.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
$100 million budget movies.
And dude, some of the there's not a ton of special effects, but
Not really,
I
no.
have to wonder. Do you know if they use the Northlight engine to craft some of the green screen backgrounds?
Hard to say. I'm imagining they would, but I don't know enough about the production. I'm figuring they would, because why wouldn't they have their own in-house
Use that
remedy? Like, if it's the same assets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had the technology for computer graphics to create backdrops and buildings and sets that are indistinguishable from real life. We've had that for a long time. But man, the stuff that and obviously this is no exception. I remember there was a helicopter shot of the Monarch building, and I was just like, fuck, like
Absolutely
you said,
gorgeous and breathtaking. And it
Yeah.
even not to
and
put
I
down
remember
one of the other
seeing
compared
through
them.
the windows that were
Yeah.
tinted. I was like, that's amazing.
And it was a lot more breathtaking than it was in just the aerial shot in gameplay of the Monarch, which I
Yeah.
think I said this exact thing already.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just piggybacking on that. I'll say
No,
it
but
too,
you
huh?
did. I mean, it's worth. It bears repeating.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember so
Let's repeat thing now.
I don't know what that is.
Fell in love with a girl.
It's a
White
band you
Stripes,
wouldn't
yeah.
like.
Oh, okay.
That you
Jack
never
White.
liked.
It's true. I have respect for him and his vinyl pressing company.
And his wife beating tendencies. Anyways.
Don't respect that part. Anyway,
No comment.
in addition to the computer generated stuff, the actual sets that they built, I thought were fucking sick. Like the one that comes to mind is the lifeboat. We haven't talked about that just yet. But I
Oh,
remember
we haven't talked about anything. Nobody even knows what we're saying
what
yet.
we're talking about. That was amazing. I just remember the stuff that I could tell was real. I was like, damn, they really built this shit. They was meaning to say that the budget that they did have was utilized in such an efficient way that I couldn't believe.
I guess they could have half-assed this and they didn't.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So essentially, the game, you play as Jack Joyce. The junction points are told by Paul Serene, who, although he is the leader of Monarch, throughout the course of the story, even he is somewhat, an island. He is Monarch, but he is also separate from Monarch, as much of Monarch is separate from him.
Yeah.
There are forces in Monarch that are against him. So he does have these deep ties to Jack Joyce.
Yeah.
So he has his foot in both realms, but the TV show is essentially the story of Monarch.
Yes.
More so than the story of Jack Joyce.
Yeah, you're right.
Because like I mentioned earlier, I didn't think Liam Burke was going to be really an integral character, because it is just kind of a throwaway interaction with him in Act 1.
But he's kind of the main character of the show.
He is, absolutely. And that's what, as soon as I started the show, I was like, oh shit, this guy, you know what I mean? This guy's
guy
actually
fucks.
a big deal. This
fucks hard.
guy fucks.
Clearly.
Clearly, he put a baby in her. You know
Put
what
a
I mean?
baby all the way in there.
He can come. But anyway, but
And we even get some exposition on and this is way later on, but he gives some insight as to how he wound up at Monarch and what he was doing before.
yeah, there's more character development in the episodes for sure with the side characters.
How he found his wife.
But it is interesting all the different perspectives you get on what's happening in the game throughout the game.
And so that's one of my major criticisms of the game, is that you get so many different perspectives and there's so many different moving parts. Some of it is told on camera. A lot of it is told through text.
Yes.
And it can be hard to keep track of this cast of maybe, I'm just going to give a rough estimate though of I'd say 15 important characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Who characters who have an actual they regularly have dialogue or multiple appearances.
An impact on the
Affect
story.
the story, yeah.
And there's Jack and William. There's Paul. There's Beth.
There's
Hatch.
Hatch.
There's Hatch.
There's Burke.
Sophia.
Then you would technically have Clarice Ogawa.
Will-
Clarice, who's
You have Nick, depending on how
you have
play through the
Nick
game,
or
Emily.
Amy, which is
yeah.
10.
Will.
I thought I said Jack and Will immediately
you
at
did,
the top.
I'm sorry.
There's the radio DJ,
And then you have Fiona.
Fiona and Charlie. That's 13.
And then you have technically, he's not a character, but Kim, Dr. Kim.
Dr. Kim, who is mentioned a lot, so that's 14.
Yeah. So there's a lot.
That I think is. I want to say that's everybody, unless I'm forgetting someone. Oh, and then you also have Emily Burke.
Yeah.
Who becomes more important at the end.
Mm-hmm. Something I did that was definitely, I agree with you in that, where it's like, it's almost like too much of a good thing, in the sense where it is nice to get all of this development and all of this story, but oftentimes when I'd watch the episode, and by the time it finished, it cut back to me being Jack, and I'd be like, what the fuck was I just doing as Jack?
Yeah,
totally.
Suddenly I'm like, I'm on a bridge. Why am I on this bridge again? What am I trying to? Oh shit. Okay. Yep.
And it didn't necessarily give like the same types of recaps that Remedy games often give. You know.
Yeah, like the.
Yeah, I skipped the recaps every time, admittedly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they weren't very informative in the episodes.
Right.
The recap, like.
There were episode recaps, but I don't think the game had the same type of recaps.
No, the game did not. The game thrust you right.
Which would have been helpful because it is like such a shift mentally.
Well, it's like a half an hour break, and also if you're doing something like we're doing, where we're playing it in segments, they seem like the natural points to stop the game, because after that it would be like, do you want to continue or return to the main? It gives you the literal option, main menu or continue.
That's right.
Totally.
So it seems
it's a good stopping point, but
yeah. But half the time I'd be coming back a day or two later.
Yeah.
And being like, what the fuck was Jack Joyce's motivation here? Why am I here? What was I? And then I have to refer back to my notes and,
And then, in Control, just to contrast, you have probably just as many important characters. However, it's like, they are all kind of contained to their interaction types, meaning like, when you see Marshall, you're talking to Marshall. Mm-hmm. When you see Arish, you're talking to Arish. When you hear from Trench, it's a big train going by. Mm-hmm. Trench, he's in the hotline calls. Mm-hmm. When you hear from Ash, he's on those voice recordings.
Yeah.
Or he's in documents.
So they're
they're compartmentalized.
Conversation, like the interaction
Right.
styles
Whereas,
almost,
I see Sophia Amaral in the emails. I see her discussed in other emails. I see her name in some documents. I see her name on this poster. I see her in the live action show. Sometimes she's talking to me. Sometimes she's talking to other characters. And it's just like, I think they did a better job in Control of compartmentalizing character interactions in a way where when you saw that character, you saw them in a familiar space. And that space was able to be transitive throughout the story. They could appear anywhere. It's not like you had to now go to Dr. Darling's hut and talk to Dr. Darling. Go across the map and find him. It's like, they would move around the world map and stuff, and then you could have a hotline call at any point in the game in any area. Mm-hmm. But the context in which you experienced their story arcs or their development or their interactions were more compartmentalized and consistent, and I just thought that was an easier way to keep track of so many important characters. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Quantum Break, I understood it better my second time around, but sometimes I was like, wait, is Sophia Amaral, is she security or research, or is she working with Hatch? Does she do Hatch's treatments and Serene's treatments?
Also, what's up with Hatch's treatments? Because they're just fucking eye drops.
Yeah, he keeps doing
he
drops.
does occasionally puts eye drops in, but it never really.
Right. Whereas Serene's treatments are
like a nebulizer,
yeah.
You have fucking asthma, yeah.
And it's kind of confusing.
And I think that that might also just be kind of the deficit of trying to make your decisions as important as they are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Maybe they kind of tried to do too much. You know what I mean?
It's possible.
Or maybe they really did intend for you to replay the game multiple times. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I wanted to keep playing Control and I wanted to go back and play it. I never did. You know what I mean? I immediately went back and started playing Quantum Break.
Oh, wow.
I finished it, and 2 days later I was like, okay, I'm going back to Junction 2. I'm making a different decision. I'm going to see where it goes. Because it's almost like with Fallout New Vegas, I'm going to use as an example. I just started another playthrough of that. Because I've never 100% sided with Caesar's Legion. And I just kind of want to know. You know what I mean? I just kind of...
Totally.
There's this curiosity in me that's like, but what if?
And the consequences are significant enough that there's a payoff to doing it again.
So maybe it wasn't, Remedy's so big brain, maybe it was intentional.
I'm sure it's intentional.
That way to encourage you, to entice you to come back. But I see what you mean for that.
It's just, there's some growing pains, I think. That's all I'm trying to say is as great as this is, it's super ambitious, and I think it stumbles here and there. Whereas I think that they mastered it in Control, even if the scope of Control is a bit more limited, but by a lot actually.
It's the scope of Control is more limited, but I don't feel like at any point it seemed more limited.
No,
You know what I mean, I think they did a really good job of. That's why I think, like, to go back to what we said earlier, Quantum Break really is the stepping stone, kind of like the missing link between the games, because you can see the stuff they were trying to do, and that you're like, wow, that's ambitious, that's cool, that's a great thing, but then you're like, they just kind of, like you said, stumbled a little bit.
Also,
fell a little bit short.
Control was a much smaller budget. Control was a budget game that I don't think anybody expected to be a big hit.
Yeah.
And it was Remedy's most successful game.
Something I think Remedy's got to fucking work on is their marketing. Not to be like just from an outside observer, I'd never heard of any of these games other than Alan Wake before we started playing them. Before you guys introduced me to all of these games, and even Alan Wake, I had literally no concept of what the game was.
I said it many times, but I just thought Alan Wake was Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
And I've said this as well. I had kind of heard of Max Payne.
I was aware of Max Payne, didn't make a connection that it was Remedy.
I was aware of the movie Max Payne before I was aware that it was a video game.
Your mom texted you or something. She was like, "Isn't that the movie?"
Yeah, my mom was also aware. I was like, "We're playing this game, Max Payne," and she was like, "Wasn't that bad Mark Wahlberg movie?" And I was like, "It was."
Yeah,
Great, Mom, you nailed it.
I don't know, like
Maybe, but we also have discussed, like, how the fuck would you market some of these things, especially Control with, like,
I'm not
Control.
Mad Men. You know what I mean? I'm not a fucking.
Well, Control, I think, had the best marketing out of all of them. I've talked about it on the show as well, but just how they basically did like different trailers narrated by
Different characters.
Trench, Dylan, and Jesse, and we're basically like, this is the world, get ready. And I'm very excited to see how they market Alan Wake 2 and how wide the marketing is.
I really hope it's their next biggest game, because it's the story of Remedy is that they keep having these successful enough games that are loved by critics and gamers alike.
It seems like they're often like and they're
not struggling. I don't want to make it sound like they're like, oh man, we don't know if we can make this next game. Like, they're always going to be okay.
It seems
But
like
I
they're
want them
always
to have that
appreciated when they come out, but by a small group. It seems like Remedy puts out cult classics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They put out.
Yeah, and I think when they've tried to go beyond that, like, they did try to do a mainstream game with Quantum Break. Mm-hmm. It was intentionally a little more mainstream, and you can see where that didn't always suit them.
Yeah.
Whereas, with Control, they really leaned into making their weirdo shit, and it totally fucking hit with people.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, a lot of people hate Quantum Break. A lot of people love it. But if you look online, like, it is consistently ranked, like, lower than other Remedy games.
Really?
I mean, as a concept, I think it's one of the better games I've played in a while. You know what I mean? As far as concept-wise and, like, and ambitious, as far as, like, the ambition. And the fact that, like, it isn't a broken game.
No.
You know what I mean?
No,
that shouldn't be a thing anymore, but I mean, like, for the amount that it does and the amount that's in that game, for it to, like, I know you guys ran into a couple bugs, but that seems to be more
like
a
just
port
like
issue.
3.
Visual.
Yeah. But, like,
I managed to...
I fell through the ground one time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's just probably because I went to the wrong spot and did something weird. You know what I mean?
I did get a camera in some guy's head at one point when I just saw the back of his eyeballs.
That's always fun.
That's not even a glitch, yeah.
Those are fun ones, though, yeah. And
but-
Control, just getting Jesse to spin in circles.
Yeah, that was the best.
So that's basically how, the show works. But let's talk about the actual content in this first episode.
Oh, yes.
We introduce, we talked about them briefly, but two main characters of the show are Charlie Wincott and Fiona Apple.
That's right.
No, Fiona Miller. So Fiona Miller is a Monarch employee.
Matt's favorite singer.
I wouldn't say so. I like 4 of her songs.
Okay.
He's more of a Macy Gray guy.
Definitely don't really like Macy Gray's music.
Let the try to say goodbye. Try to walk away. Stumble.
Stutter.
Stutter. I'm trapped
So
in
it was unclear to me what Fiona's job is.
She's a researcher. She's a Chronon researcher.
Okay.
Yeah, she just kind of, she feels like just like a lemming.
Yeah, it feels like she just goes around doing what she wants. And heads up, Fiona is a double agent as well. She's
what?
They never really like there might be a thing where I think she like calls Beth or something.
No, she doesn't ever call her, but she talks about her. She mentions to Charlie that she knows her, and
I don't remember any direct connection.
They have direct correspondence via email.
Yes, it's only in the supplemental information.
Which is again, it's like a one or two interactions with them on screen would have gone a long way for me, rather than when I saw like the direct emails between Fiona and Beth, I was like, oh.
Even if it was just like they passed by each other in a scene and there was like a knowing glance where they both saw each other. And
Yeah.
like, and then kept going, you'd be like, oh, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Right.
But they do none of that.
Yeah, which I know you don't want to give everything away, and Remedy is really good at those layers. But again, there's just like, I said it when we started, before we even started this, just like this there's so that the density of the information and the number of different ways you can get information in this game, it's hard to like really make the connections in a meaningful way, where usually what happens in Remedy games is you can make all the connections, but you don't always realize how deep they go.
Yeah.
Where in this, like, I was just missing some of the connections my first time.
In regards to their, Beth and Fiona, their connection. I think like a Reddit guy would respond by saying, well, actually, it'd probably be best for them not to have a lot of communication or connection or be seen together to, not raise any concern or anybody seeing, creating that connection.
Right, but they're
the audience.
Right, but they're
would
regularly
be beneficial.
working together.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do though, because
They talk about
They
it.
do, and they work in tandem. And if you see the emails, it seems as though there's regular correspondence between the two of them.
Right, but like, Fiona is in the research, whereas.
Oh, I mean, they don't work together at Monarch necessarily, but I mean, like, they are both working on the plan.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so, like,
I was misunderstanding that.
even if like there was a scene of her typing to Beth or something,
Yeah.
just something more to build on that.
Just to
Not
cement
even,
that connection.
yeah, just to show
I remember
it.
thinking when Fiona had some other not to anything in specific, but I was like, oh, she's her own party as well. Like she's doing her thing.
And she's not, though.
No, it took me a while to realize that
It seemed like she was.
she was together with Beth.
They are frustratingly vague at times with people's motivations in this game. And I don't just mean in the times when it's like, there are certain ones where it's clearly meant to be a reveal later. You know what I mean? Like, oh my goodness, that's their motivation the whole time. But some of them I'm like, you should just kind of like give me a little more to go on of like.
And they probably did in a fucking email or a diary entry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, the other main character in the show, Charlie Wincott, who's the head of surveillance.
Boo, Charlie. Boo.
Charlie.
I fucking hated him.
You guys are both Charlies. Why are you booing him?
I don't know if I'm a Charlie.
I don't like self representation. I don't think
Something
I'm
Charlie would say. Ooh, that is something Charlie would say.
No, it's not.
No, he's just Charlie.
Can't
is
you
like-
guys do anything right?
That's Charlie is just like a classic like 4chan guy.
He's like a keyboard
Redditor.
cowboy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like your classic fucking like incel, arrogant neckbeard. I don't know. I just basement dweller. It's just like
Yeah, and it's completely false confidence. He's actually, I'd say, a little bitch.
A big winner.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, he definitely. There's self-awareness there at least that comes later. You know what I mean? But I was almost upset that they kind of tried to give him more character development. 'Cause I was like, I just want to hate him. Let me
just
hate him.
wanna hate him.
They do
I
a good
do
job
think-
though of making you despise him.
Yeah.
I have empathy for him at my core, but yeah, he's a character that you're not really supposed to like.
It's like it's one of those scenarios where like I understand that it's set up for you to have empathy for him. However, he kind of like for me destroyed every shot at redemption. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By just being a
That's
pile of
fair.
shit.
But as we were talking about off camera with just Jordan and I, what you see of Charlie is he's one of the characters that's most affected by choices that you make in the junctions.
Yes, and we will talk about that in a future episode.
In other junctions.
But speaking of this episode of Quantum Break, essentially, Fiona's flirting with Charlie. There's
Fiona's farting.
she's farting on Charlie.
That's his kink.
He's really into it. She has a big bite of that bagel sausage or whatever.
Oh, breakfast Sammy looks so good.
Looks really tasty.
She gave him the one with runny egg.
Get my desk dirty.
Yeah. So basically,
Stuff's turning red.
there's a big work party. Fiona's like, why don't we go together? She's kind of flirting with him.
And Charlie's like, I guess. Okay.
And,
go to parties.
and he's trying to play it cool.
He's rock hard.
So that kind of like
You
that.
can't hide
The
it.
tip's wet.
That and Charlie's, he's a douche. He's a douche. He's constantly kind of like throwing his weight around and trying to act more important than he really is.
And trying to act very aloof with Fiona, who he's clearly like,
Is the
Yes.
only girl that's ever
like the
shown
only
him
woman who's
attention.
probably gonna hit on him this month or year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's being like, oh, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, he's trying so hard to be cool.
Yeah, I know Paul Serene. Yeah.
And so then we see like Liam Burke gets home from work. He's with his wife.
From like 4 days of work.
Yeah.
Too. Not
She
like a 9 to 5.
doesn't know what he does for a living.
Yeah.
Good relationship,
And, well, that's what it means to be a man sometimes.
That's what it means to be a paid killer sometimes.
Oh, yes. And we learn, that she's pregnant and he loves her, but he's kept away by work and he's, he is very important at Monarch.
Yes.
But he doesn't seem to be aware of that.
Of how important he is?
Yes.
I'd argue that.
Are you sure?
think
He's
you're
the
fucking wrong.
goddamn head of security.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into future
He
developments,
is
but
not privy to a lot of what's going on, but
Yes.
nobody is outside of Paul Serene and Martin Hatch at the end of
It
the
doesn't
day.
matter how much he knows. It doesn't mean he's any less important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
As far as like what's ultimately
suppose.
going on, there aren't many people outside of like 4 people.
Even if he doesn't know why he's doing what he's doing, the fact that he does it very well and is used by upper management and entrusted with a lot of stuff, he's very important.
Yeah, I think if he is not aware to the extent of how much his superiors rely on him. Is that fair to say?
I think he
Arguable
does.
too.
I think he just doesn't know always what's going on.
I don't think he knows the like.
But also,
the
that's
breadth or
not
depth of-
uncommon in a military type thing to be like,
Kind of chain.
it's on a need-to-know basis, and you just accept that.
and you don't need to know. But he's got some dumb baby
You need
growing
to kill all
inside
those
of his
people,
bitch
and
wife, and
you can't know why.
I'm kidding.
So essentially what happens is,
ugly baby.
Beth has transported Jack Joyce to, to a warehouse. He's going to try to, figure out how to get back at Paul Serene and figure out what's going on here.
He killed my brother.
Basically, Liam's like, Beth, what the fuck?
Yeah.
He like walks in on her and she's like, you don't understand what's going on, Liam. You need to listen to me. And Jackie boy freezes fucking time, takes their guns, because they're having a little Mexican, standoff.
And the thing is, it seems like Liam is vaguely willing to kind of hear what Beth has to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
he's
he-
not fully
Because he's like,
aggro.
yeah, he doesn't know, he knows that he doesn't know everything.
Yes.
And so if someone he respects, because it also seems like Beth is also someone who isn't just like a rank and file member of Monarch. Seems like she has some like
Yeah, which
hierarchy there.
Which gets a little gray when it comes to like Paul Serene's awareness of her
I
later
was
on
going to
in
say
the
that
game.
earlier. Yeah, that was
But he's also very removed from the day-to-day operations.
Whereas, like you said earlier, Burke being head of security is, you know what I mean, interacting with.
Yeah,
them.
there's hierarchies.
Yeah.
This is, and I'm going to make this very brief, but considering what we know later on from the story, maybe I missed something. I don't understand how Beth is able to hold a position within Monarch at all, but maybe.
Oh, I want to get into that. We'll get into that later because that's a fucking. I'm gonna go like galaxy brain for a second.
Thank God, because it's been clawing my brain. And that's a big reason why I said earlier that I was like, time stuff kind of turns me off because there's just no amazing way to do it perfectly.
Well, because it's a made up thing, so it's like
Yeah.
It seems like it'd be easy for anybody to get a job at Monarch, though, because they've literally bought everything in the city.
like it seems like as though it's easy for Fiona to, like you said, kind of do nothing, just float around because it is such a massive place where there probably is definitely
Yeah.
people who just shoot under the radar who like you work jobs in the small jobs we work where you're like that guy doesn't fucking do anything. Nobody says anything about it, and people are like that's just what he does.
sure
You're
it
like
just
why?
scales
You know
up.
what I
Now, now imagine a business the size of like a small town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's 150 people who are doing fucking nothing.
And Serene is like aware constantly that there's like
Deception.
and like
Shadows.
and all sorts of shit, and he's like, just gotta keep my eye on the prize.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll get more into it, but I think that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So essentially, they find like Monarch agents storm the scene. Jack Joyce is gone. They're like, "Whoa, Burke, you helped Beth Wilder.
He's like, no.
You let Jack Joyce escape." He's like, "No, no, no." And she's like, dude, they're going to kill us. You need to trust me. And they fucking break out of there together. And now,
They break on through.
basically, the whole story is kind of like they're trying to get the countermeasure. It's the one thing that could stop the fracture in time. They're trying to get back to the time machine. There's like 3 different time machines, or maybe even 4. There's several time machines where they get moved around in different points in time.
Stolen and
I think there's overall only 2,
yeah.
but they just get deconstructed and moved multiple
Right.
times.
And I think that there's the core that there's only one core.
No, there's 2 cores.
What?
Yeah.
2 separate cores. Yeah.
There's 2 separate cores. Because Monarch moves one core to Monarch headquarters, and the other core, Monarch doesn't know where it is.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So anyway, Beth is trying to help, and Jack's not entirely sure that he trusts Beth either.
No. Because Jack also has it's similar to Liam's character in the sense that he's like, he did just come here to help his buddy Paul, and maybe he wasn't even planning on seeing his brother. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's like, I'm here, I know he's here, but we don't fucking talk.
He was trying to
At this
avoid
point,
it.
at this point in the story, Jack is just mad at Paul Serene for killing his brother.
Yeah.
And that's really all he gives a shit about, and is really the full breadth of his awareness.
But Beth is like, you are part of a bigger thing. You need to listen to me. You need to help me. Like, this is going to work out. Like, we need to do this.
He's like, no, I'll go kill Paul.
pretty
at
much,
first,
yeah.
That's at first, he's pretty much like, nah, fuck you. I don't know what you guys are. I hate all. You're
He
weird.
killed me, brother. I kill him now.
So, I think what's happening is they're trying to get into Dr. Kim's lab, right? Or is that later?
I think
No, that's later. That's you're looking at episode 2, and that's Fiona and
Well, what? So,
and Liam too.
so basically, Liam, like Beth tells Liam what to do, and Liam's like, "Hey, I need to go do this thing. I need clearance." I thought that
Let me refer to my notes for half a second.
I was pretty sure that Liam was initially trying to get clearance to the lab, and
So he goes and meets up with Charlie.
yeah, and then Charlie's like, "You're bullshitting."
2.
No,
No, am I wrong?
No, because episode 1 ends with the high speed chase.
yeah, that's how he becomes a fugitive. Is after Charlie's like, "Oh, you're lying to me. I'm calling security on you."
I don't remember how I remember Charlie was aware of it from the beginning, like of the interaction with Liam, but I don't remember the details of how they got to that point or where Liam was trying to go.
Hey, it's hard to keep track of time travel, but it is our duty
As Americans?
as hosts of this show to know what's going on. I don't see how I could be wrong.
That's your problem.
Well, we cleared it up, and eat my ass, I was correct and you were not. Although you were right in a different way. You were just thinking of something that happens later. Essentially, the show is the quest to enter Dr. Kim's lab.
Yes, at first.
For the first, 3 episodes. So they're like, look, Liam, I'm Beth Wilder. I'm telling you something. Listen to me. And I know there's guns pointed at us right now, but you got to hear me out. And they're like, shut up. I'll shoot you.
Stop that.
There's something called the lifeboat protocol that can help save humanity. However, they don't really know what it is.
Yeah, nobody has really much of a concept of what it is other than...
But they know that Dr. Kim was working on it, and if they can get into his lab, they can find out more about it. So really, Beth is on more of a reconnaissance mission because she's not entirely sure how it all works.
Yeah.
They escape from the Monarch agents. Beth's off to go help Jack. Liam Burke, Mr. Burke,
Esquire.
if you're nasty, he goes to Charlie. He's like, hey,
Yeah, he's all sweaty.
I need to get into Kim's lab. And they're like, really? I don't think that you're supposed to be in there. And Liam's like, no, Martin Hatch told me to get in there, so if I could just get the
Don't worry about it, bud.
codes,
You and me.
And it's like, dude, you are not cool. Like, it was like interrogation, or I don't know. It's like, it seems like someone who's like such an elite military type agent would like know how to use basic deception.
Oh, yeah. Or just keep his fucking cool for a few minutes, because he's really like, it's like he just took a bunch of acid 2 hours ago, and then his boss walked up and he's like, are you okay? And you're like, I am fine. Like, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm great. And he's like, you're not good. You got to go home. Like,
Yeah.
Liam's like, yeah, no, I'm just, he told me to go into Hatch. Hatch told me to go into the office to see
Martin Hatch,
Dr. Kim. I just gotta go in Kim's office.
Because
Yeah, it doesn't work out. And so there is a high-speed chase, which actually is a pretty good fucking chase scene, like a car chase scene.
Yeah.
Those aren't easy to do
no,
in general. Like, cars are scary. You need the
film.
license to operate one.
I wonder what city they filmed that in.
Georgia.
Did they really?
Well, it's a state.
I don't know.
That is a state.
Probably
right?
Atlanta.
It looks cool.
I think they filmed it in the state of Georgia, though.
State of Georgia. State of Georgia.
I think they filmed it in the state of Georgia.
Oh, okay. I thought it took me a minute to realize, but after this sequence, because there's a lot of like moments where Liam seems to evade death and overcome odds and just kill hundreds of men, and I think that's because our boy Liam Burke is indeed an echo of one Max Payne.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know about
He's got
that.
the wife. He's got the babu. It's not exactly the same story. He's looking out for them though.
Yes, maybe. I just
And he
took it more as
I know
like,
he's like a high-ranking agent, but he kicks some ridiculous.
the way
ass.
I look
He
at
does
it is,
have almost superhuman abilities in combat.
he is also though he's the head of security, which implying
Granted.
that like he knows any of the combat training that any of these people already have.
For sure.
Or the combat training is based on stuff that he knows and decided they should know. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, I don't know. We learn more about, Liam's conflicts in his past too as we continue on, but like it seems like he's just an elite killing machine.
Yeah,
I see both sides of this.
I don't think it's
I
not
think that's an
one-to-one.
interesting theory for sure. I just don't, you know what I mean?
'Cause,
I'm
you
just
know,
kind of giving the other side.
killer,
Of,
like-
maybe it isn't that.
Authority, military, paramilitary man.
I guess if there was to be a
Ridiculous
Max
body
Payne
count.
analog in Quantum Break,
He's
I don't
the
know who
one.
else fits it better. His body count is like probably larger.
Well, because you
than
have the wife and
Jack's.
baby who you're just trying to stop from dying. You know what I
That
mean?
is
yeah,
his
it's
one
like
goal.
the exact same
And they
motivations.
ultimately die in something that, while not being your fault, would be your fault because of your neglect.
secondhand. Yeah,
Because he just doesn't want to know what's going on at Monarch. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And whereas with Max Payne, he knew if he had listened to his wife, you know what I mean? But she's
Right.
just fucking talking all the
Oh
time.
God damn! Am I right? Jesus
But if he
Christ!
had just listened to her,
I just needed a bottle of Jack, a bottle of Kong.
It's not called Jack in this
Kong
world.
whiskey. Jack Kong.
Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you,
So
Lance Boyle.
this is probably pretty good. I guess this is a good time to imagine or to mention that I did have a lot of fun imagining if Max Payne, like specifically from the third game, was in Quantum Break. If he was somehow like a main character, this made me laugh.
You sent us a bit.
Did you like the bit?
It was pretty funny.
It was okay.
I think I said like I just imagine Max like being in there in the middle of some long talk between like say like Paul and like Will, where they're just going back and forth with the technical time terms and like all these quantum physics, and Max just sitting there with like the most boggled expression on his mind. And specifically that one screenshot that maybe you could put on screen right here for our viewers from Max Payne 3, where he just looks totally.
It's the face when he realizes he is the dumb gringo.
He is the dumb gringo.
I like the scene where Max Payne walks into like the place where they're clearly taking organs out of people, and he's just like, "What's going on? What are you doing in here?"
Like, it's very
and you're like,
similar.
"There's open
You guys
bodies."
both have a good Max Payne 3 voice.
I don't know why.
It's different than the Max Payne 1 and 2. It's gravelier and also just a little more.
Doofy?
It's like more exasperated.
Yeah.
Like in the first two, he's like, I'm kind of sly. And by 3, he's like, I don't have time for all this shit.
I wish he sounded like that. I don't have time for this. God damn it!
It's kind of how he talks, though.
It's kind of, it is more like
Just tell me who I gotta kill.
they turned up the fader on the mixer for that one. And man,
Like
it
Gilbert
just-
Gottfried on a rampage.
yeah.
It's a little bit more like that than the first ones, where he's always like, I was as cool as ice. You know what I mean? And in the third one, he's very whiny, kind of, and like just like a, come on.
He's fucking hungover the whole time. He's like, "Can
Yeah.
you keep it down?"
He's like waving his arms at his mom that turned his light on in his room.
Do you want to do a bit of your bit?
I do think I said, I don't have time to wait. No,
It's not. I don't have time to play with myself. That's not the line. That's Duke.
all this time talk. It was time I got out of there. Something like that.
There you go.
Just Jesus Christ. It made me laugh multiple times every time I thought about it.
All right. Well, that's as good of a point as I need to stop and say, hey, that's the first act, junction, and episode of Quantum Break. And my God, I'm glad we're breaking. We normally do these in one marathon session, maybe two. This will be broken up into at least 3 sessions. We might be able to fit more, now we've gotten a lot of our willies out, so to speak.
Yeah, we got a lot of the
Willie's
bullshit
been out.
out of the way.
Yeah.
My dick's been out this whole time.
Entire time.
But man, dense as the day is long, this game is.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we really wanted to, you know what I mean? It could be twice as dense if we got into every single decision in every way, I mean, as we continue on,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so much to this game.
Oh, like if we discuss the
And we will, because it seems like most of us made separate choices or different choices for one another. So we'll get into that in the next episode. Until then, peace be with you, and be sure
also
to
with you.
thank you, and be sure to check out the rest of the channel. We have a lot more videos. We have these long form discussions on every other Remedy story-based Remedy game before
Yes.
this, and
we got playlists.
there's playlists. Look,
We got shorts.
welcome to the playlist ball.
We got shirtless videos.
We got shirtless videos. We got bottomless videos.
You looking for sex appeal? You looking for nerdy gamer shit? We got it all for you.
A couple skits.
Uh-huh.
Let's plays if you really dig.
If you dig Let's
dig.
Plays. All right, goodbye.
Damn, how long was that?